Okay, so we'll jump into the topics. But Fanatic, you had a specific topic that you wanted to discuss. Um, uh, yeah, could you tell us about that? I guess. Well, maybe we'll give that a try. Fanatic.
I'm trying to remember. I wrote it. I'm trying to see what it was.
It says there has been a.
Ah,
Would you want it so said
yeah.
or not?
Oh, for sure. I think it's a great topic.
Okay.
It was just about the fact that there has been like a rise in like single fatherhood in the country in general.
Okay.
There's been like a drastic increase, and I think a lot of times there's just so many conversations around this topic. For one, it's the image of black men and the fact that very often black men are kind of portrayed as these people that abandon their kids. But there's all of these studies that show that even though blacks are less likely to be married, and blacks are sometimes not they might not cohabit with their parent with their children, that black men are still very very much involved in their lives. In fact, there are plenty of studies that have actually demonstrated the fact that black men actually spend more time with their children than the average family, than white people do, even in the cases in which they're like divorced parents. So like divorced white men will spend a lot more time working and not with their kids, but providing financially, whereas black men, even in the cases where they're not married, they have a tendency more to do to be involved and show up at recitals and just to be involved in these kids' lives. And there's this bad stigma that's always associated with the idea that black men just abandon their kids, which just I'm looking at data that kind of says the opposite. And I think there is a rise in women abandoning their children when it comes to black men, or just men in general. And there's a lot more cases of that than there was in the past. And so I kind of wanted to just discuss that in general. There's just so many things in that umbrella of conversation.
Okay. All right. Um, I guess that sounds like a really interesting topic. If everyone else would like to discuss that, I definitely would be fine with it. Marks, what do you think? Your introduction. Someone, we can hear
Uh,
you typing. Someone, if you could mute yourself in Discord if you're typing. Yeah. All right. Go ahead.
my introduction. Did you? Sorry, because I had to go do something. Did you introduce the topic, or did you just a general introduction?
Yeah. So okay. It was, yeah. General introduction. Did you hear what Fanatic just said? Or
Yeah, a little bit about women abandoning their children more.
yeah. So
Yeah.
all right. Why don't we just come back to you? Madeline.
As far as topics go, this is an interesting one. I haven't delved deep into this at all, but I'm looking at statistics here, and it seems like a really cool idea. I would be very happy to talk about this. I was also interested in the. I did want to talk
We could talk
about
about the other stuff later on.
solidarity.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, just my take on this.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
my take on this. I'm looking at statistics right now, and it seems like as of 2017. 71% of single parents are mothers, 29% are fathers. But versus 1968, it was 88 and 12%. So this is definitely true. It is an increasing percentage of single fathers out there. I know that we have the stereotype, and actually, family history wise, there were I heard that I have some ancestors who may have abandoned their families for a period of time and then came back later, so this type of thing happens quite a bit. I'm not sure what the I don't know enough about this topic to like really give a take, though, to be
All right.
honest. Like I'm gonna kind of
That's fine.
do some research.
Kalana.
Yeah, I guess would it be possible to just get a little bit more of a specification on like what aspect of this you want us to discuss, Fanatic? Because like I can see the stat and say, yep, that's a stat. But what exactly about it?
I just think, well, I feel like, again, there's so many different ways to go with this. I think for one of the things is I do think that, like the stigma affiliated with that, I think is sometimes misplaced. And the idea, or no, the stigma is appropriate, but I feel like there's a mischaracterization and a mislabeling of what's exactly happening. So even though you have blacks that are less likely to get married, I think that's more of a poverty issue than it is anything else to do with like a moral issue, right? And I think when it comes to like there's this meme about like black fatherlessness. A lot of times, what they ended up doing was just just looking for marriage rates. And so it would be they would look at married mothers versus unmarried mothers. And it's like, that's really an unfair statistic, like, because people can still be very, very much involved in their lives outside of that. And I think the fact that it's increasing so dramatically, I was looking, and I think the number, it was like an 800% from the 60s till now, an increase in single fathered homes. So it's clearly something that's on the rise, and I feel like it's just something that needs to be talked about. And I think we need to celebrate the fact that there are men stepping up to the plate in that way, and kind of disassociate ourselves from this unfounded false stigma.
Okay. So then I guess on the topic, yeah, I think even though that there is a change in the stat, I think I don't it's a little bit hard to say, but I think in general, like most of our stereotypes are created just to make us look bad. So even if there is a whole change in the stat, I don't really think people that like to have the idea that like all Black people are fatherless are really gonna change their mind on it. Though it is very interesting to know that this like there is a change, and I would like to know more about like what exact like socioeconomic and cultural like why is this happening? Like, what is causing this? Why is there suddenly like a jump? And I guess it's not really suddenly because, yeah, as we said, this has been since the 60s. But yeah, I guess maybe just if anyone is able to go ahead and elaborate further on the causation of this, I think it would be interesting to maybe speak more about like what the causation. Yeah.
Azzy.
Yeah.
I guess there's several factors for causation and rise of single fatherhood across the board. Could be anywhere from cultural to the actual workplace. There's been workplaces have been working towards parental leave, as in, so the father will be able to stay home with the children if they have children, and the mother can still continue to work. So yeah, there's been increase in leniency for fathers who have children. So, and then if you even talk about I guess around the 40s to 60s, just women in general had, especially Black women, they had a access. I was doing a study in my Black studies class. Black women had even though they didn't make as much as us, they had consistent access to income in some forms of secretarial work, housework. Despite how hard they had to work, they overall just made more money than the Black men at that time. So it was just harder for men to care for their kids back then. But I guess now things have changed. And now I guess it's then cultural. Uh, we are more accepting of men who are taking on what we would call the maternal role, like the household role. Like I know of a very famous rapper who he his expenses and his income would always zero out, and his wife would often make more than him. So he decided I might as well just stay home with the kids. Uh, though that did turn into something bigger when he started doing YouTube, and then all of a sudden he started out earning everyone, and now she was able to stay home. But yeah, men are choosing to stay home now, and women are working. And but she was she was in education, she was a teacher. So yeah, they're just, when you look at the reality of things, when you look at the reality of like these statistics, they combat these kind of false narratives, or they're narratives that have a basis, they have truth, but they're often used against us to make us look bad. Fathers across the spectrum, whether it be white or Black, but particularly Black because we're just a minority. And yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Legend?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with the fanatic. I think the bigger issue is the poverty and us being under resourced as a people. And it's very interesting that I didn't even know about this. It's very interesting that he said that single father rate is increasing. You know, and I do not like the stigma, the generalization of black fathers not being around. You know, deadbeat dads and things of that nature. Because I know a lot of black men who are very much involved with their children, whether they're married or not. You know, both married and unmarried. So yeah, I appreciate this topic.
Okay. And Earl.
Yeah, so yeah, good topic. And I think it all just boils down to like Fnatic said, is it's we just have like in a lot of aspects of society, black people in general have had negative perceptions forced upon them all over the place, right? And family is just one of those things. I don't personally, I don't think that black men were ever disproportionately not in their children lives. I think that when they started stripping the men out of the household, they started to build this perception of men not being in their black men not being in their children's lives. And as that perception got bigger and more widespread, it just kind of stuck. I think that naturally, black men are very loving and caring men, and when they look at their children, they absolutely want to be around their children. There was a point to where black women were put on, social welfare and things like that in order to make them feel like they no longer needed the black man as a ploy. I guess people can look at that in different ways and have different opinions on that. Um, but I really think that it's just been a negative perception forced on black men. And the era of men being taken out of the houses, I think it's just coming back around to the fact that a lot of us black men grew up without fathers. So just personally for me, when I grew up and I had a child, I have one daughter. I absolutely made it a point that I would never, abandon my child, because I've seen, how it's been not having a father, right? So I think that the period of time that we went through, with, there was a period where there was, less black men in their children's lives. Those children have now grown up like me, and so now it's going to start, like he said, there's a rise in black fathers, right? I think the rise in single black fathers is probably coming from the fact that a lot of the period of time where black men were taken out of the homes, and all those young black men that grew up without fathers now have this ultra passion for being in their kids' lives, right? There's a lot of instances, where um, friends have had kids with women that they end up absolutely hating, but they go out of their way, completely out of their way, to make sure that they can, even if they can, all they can do is drop off a pair of shoes on the doorstep and run, right? Just because of how misfortunate it was for them not to have a father in their life, So I think that may be one of the causes of the rise in single black fathers
Okay.
as well. But I
Uh,
think it all boils down to perception for sure, though.
It does.
Mm.
And go
No,
ahead.
go ahead.
I'm
No,
sorry,
it's
there's
fine.
one more. You're right.
It's fine.
Well, I was just
Go
going to say,
ahead.
it's very much a perception issue, and I think that's one of the biggest problems I have, is that I'm learning how much of this game is like really it revolves around optics, right? Like the media will report a specific way, and then they'll and then that's the opinion that we get. For example, a lot of times, like we'll think about like welfare and things like that, and I think it was Reagan who like started the whole like welfare queen thing, right? And it was like that while he was doing that, like whites were like overwhelmingly the majority of people on welfare at this point. Like they still are. And I get proportionally, there's been like this massive increase. But then a lot of that has to do with other forms of systemic oppression, right? Like you create a dependency. You create a dependency on the system when you make it. These were in their policies that said, if you have a black man in the house, then at this point you can't get government assistance. Now, if you couple that with something where it's like we're unwilling to give you work as black women due to intersectionality and things like that, Then now you have these Black women who literally, they need to get money. They need to be able to provide for their young. They have starving children. You have a husband who's having a hard time getting work because they just don't want to give Black people jobs. You tell them, we'll give you money if he's not there. So then now there's pressure on him to leave the house just so that his children are well taken care of. And then you stigmatize the idea that he's not going to be there at this point. Like, and it's just, I feel like it's just a big form of systemic oppression. Like, and one other point I want to make is I feel like there's always a lot of cultural pressure on men in general about accountability. Anytime men do something wrong, there's always going to be this really, really big push for accountability. So then they're always going to stigmatize men anytime they feel like there's some error there. They're going to try to label it as a moral failing for men. But now that women are working a lot more and women are providers, and you find women going to make lives for themselves at increasing numbers, and some of them even abandoning their children. Sometimes it's an economic decision. And it's just, to me, I just think this entire phrasing, the entire framing of this issue, I think is rooted in white supremacy.
Yeah,
I agree.
Could I ask
Yeah,
though, for
okay.
this statistic, is it specific to black black men,
Oh.
like where the single family rates, single father
and if you
rates
could,
are
like,
raising?
and just one thing, Fanatic,
Fine.
if you could
Yeah.
like
I
post
want-
the studies that you're talking about, that'd be great. Go ahead.
Sure, let me
Yeah.
find them.
Remarks.
Yeah, I actually wanted to hit on my intro. So the thing I found, which is what I think Fanatic is researching too, is this Pew Research article. I'll link in the chat at the end of it. In general, it's saying that single fatherhood has been rising throughout the 60s, 2011s, because that's the end of this research. But it hasn't been rising. But mostly it's been white and Hispanic. But I'll be charitable, and like, it's probably true that it's affected Black men as well, and Black single fatherhood rate is rising as well. Is that a good thing? Depends. In this economic environment, I don't really view, in general, because I view society in generalities. I don't really view single parenting as a good option most of the time, because even because of the statistics showing single parenting, you need to have a decent economic income, a good communal environment, and in today's society, it's very hard to find those things. So I just generally discourage single parenting. In this environment, because it's more likely to lead to worse outcomes. But is it a sign that we're moving in the right direction? It can be. According to this study, it seems like men in general are more likely to be economically well off than single women. They're more likely to be with an unmarried spouse. Um, it can be. All I really care is about how the child's well-being. If we can get like a statistic showing that single fatherhood rate is somehow correlative and causative of increased child happiness. I know that sounds weird, but just a general idea, then I guess I'll be happy. But this statistic, I mean, to me, it's kind of, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think any type of household in which you only have one person focusing on child isn't great. I don't really care about like if it's a man or a woman, or a man and a man, or a woman and a woman. I don't really give a shit as long as there's two people, because then it just generally means that you have more access to expendable income, as well as there's someone to be there and not have to lose their source of income to go pick up, a child from wherever it's sick, the daycare, stitches, hospital, whatever. So I don't really, I mean, I see it as a cultural shift. Is it necessarily like a positive cultural shift? I think it's just a cultural shift. Especially since this seems to be so recent. I don't know if we have any really availability to get stats on whether or not this is really leaning towards negative, positive, or neutral outcomes.
I posted two studies that I was able to like dig up that seem to be the most relevant, useful so far. Not necessarily on the outcomes, because the kids are still being raised currently, obviously. What I find that's interesting is that like even though the bulk of single parent families are actually white, they still have minority they have minority images when you link it in Discord, which is ridiculous. Like as if like the stereotype is actually being fulfilled by the links that I'm actually posting in VC chat right now. It's just ridiculous. But in these links, I'm looking at it. It appears that the number of single parent families is actually dropping. So in 2010, you had 6.5 million African American families with single parents, and it's been reduced to less than 6 million in 2019. Was the last statistic. And then the Pew Research Center was where we had the percentages for more dads participating in or being the single parent. And there's another thing that we haven't even mentioned yet. Solo parents aren't necessarily by themselves. They might be cohabiting anyway. They're just not married. I'm not sure how these various organizations are polling their polling to figure out like what a single like I don't know what the definition of a single parent is.
So
in
there's a
my
few
All together in these. Yeah,
found
go ahead.
so that the NHS article that I linked you, or an NHS report rather that I linked you, that has a bunch of the information where they go into like the very much a lot of the specifics. And so what they did was they raised they looked at a lot of characteristics for I guess they were talking about co-residential parents and then like non-residential parents, and they're talking about the fact that a lot of and they were comparing the rates at which parents were likely to be involved with their children in specific ways.
yeah.
And of course, these things can't be just equally tracked, and I'll explain why really briefly. But one of the things that they looked at, they said there was a significant difference by Hispanic origin and race among fathers with co-residential children. Black fathers, 70%, were most likely to have bathed, dressed, diapered, or helped their children use the toilet every day, compared with whites, 60%, and Hispanic fathers, 45%. Then they also said a larger percent of older fathers had not played with their co-residential children compared with the younger fathers. 47% of fathers aged 35 to 44 and 40% of fathers aged 25. Blah, blah, blah. Hold on. It's a higher percentage of Hispanic fathers aged 15 to 44, 52%, had not played with their non-co-residential children in the last weeks compared with white, 30%, and black, 25%. Then they were looking at 2/3 of Hispanic fathers aged 15 to 44, 66%, had not bathed, dressed, or diapered their children in the last 4 weeks, significantly more than blacks, 34%, and white fathers, 39%. So in a lot of these ways, when it comes to like the daily care of their children, being involved in their children's lives, these are just random statistics that from this really, really large report that I linked there. And I'm sort of like looking it up on the fly because it wasn't like I came prepared like, oh, I have a presentation to make. But the thing is, this was the way I even came to this was an article that was trying to dispel the black absent father myth. And in doing so, they quoted this NHS report, which seems to display that in co-residential situations, blacks tend to be a lot more involved with black fathers tend to be a lot more involved with their children's lives on a regular basis, and even in non-co-residential situations. Now, some of these things are cultural, right? Like, whereas like blacks are more likely to change their kids' diapers, it doesn't mean that the Hispanic men in these cases aren't in their kids' lives. It's just Hispanic men typically just don't do that kind of work. They really are a lot more socially conservative and allow women to do those things. And there's cultural things where women won't even allow the husband, even if he wanted to change diapers. So there's some cultural things there, but it's just the fact of the matter is playing with your children on a regular basis, reading to your children on a regular basis, and things like that. Those are obviously important things, and black men tend to do those things very, very much. So this thing is a myth, and I think it again is rooted very much in white supremacy.
Yeah.
Also, Mad Lad, real quick because I wanted to address the Pew Research thing that I linked accounts. I think what you were hinting at. So it's saying the term single father includes men in a variety of family circumstances. About half, 52%, are separated, divorced, widowed, or never married, and are living without a cohabiting partner. Some 41% are living with a non-marital partner, and a small share, 7%, are married with living apart from their spouse. So
Yeah, so I guess it's considered single as long as the person isn't with the person that they made the kid with. I guess that seems to be the specifier.
So I think this is actually. Oh, sorry. Was someone else going to jump in?
I was just gonna say one thing. I think the idea that black men don't want to care for their kids was always a myth. I think just in general, black people are very nurturing, right? All throughout history in this country, we've been raising other people's kids. You know, even though they called us the monsters and everything else, we raised their kids and we cooked their food, took care of their livestock, right? I don't think we were ever at a point where we would look at our children and not want to take care of them. I think that it was just another tool to knock us down and dehumanize us in the eyes of white America in order to make us look like less of a people. And unfortunately, in some eyes, that kind of shaped our minds. The negative stigma also stuck to us and kind of shaped our minds and kind of made us think, oh well, maybe black men, maybe we don't like taking care of our kids. So unconsciously, there was maybe uh, uh some black men that didn't take care of their kids, thinking that it was normal, right? Even though it never was. I don't think this was something that we actually displayed and it became normal on our part. I think this was propaganda.
I mean, like all of this is honestly, they just kind of prescribe like all negative attributes to us because we're not the model minority. Like there's this whole thing that's used to go ahead and pit minorities against each other, and there's the good ones versus the bad ones, and the bad ones that want to work with the good ones, and the good ones that want to work with the bad ones. And like just like every other type of population, there's nuance always. Like obviously there are, there's white people that are super educated, there's white people that are super uneducated, but they are like the only group of people that are able to go ahead and they can be whatever they want. When you first meet a white person, it's not, you don't automatically assume anything. It's wait until you hear, and whatever they want, it's never an outlier. It's just they can be whatever you want. Whenever you see like a what really well spoken like black person, they're like, wow, you're really smart for a Negro. Like, and that's never something
You
that's
speak white.
you speak really white. Like, okay, thank you. And like I think like even if it was even just a slight blip in the stats, rather than the national average of single fathers is 13 single mothers is 13%. If we happen to be 15, they're like, damn, black people really do be not like staying with each other. Like they just really prescribe a bunch of negative things. Like I don't think there's really anything positive that they give to us as like as a ethnic group besides you dance good and dribble really fast.
I was just about to say that. We can sing and we can dance and entertain. That's the only thing they'll give us. They're not gonna. Most people are not aware of the fact that Ben Carson, a fan of Ben Carson, but Ben Carson was the first person I think that performed an open heart surgery. Was he
no, he separated Siamese twins.
Is that what he did?
Yeah, he's a brain surgeon.
Yeah,
he was able to do
brain. There we go. Okay, so but like he was like the first one in his field to do that, right? And most people have no idea.
Not the first one to separate Siamese trees, but like I think he just did a really difficult surgery, like a really I think a first in his class surgery, but
like Siamese twins that were like they were like
and it's called conjoined twins. Conjoined twins.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm so sorry. Okay.
Yeah. But it was I think a specific type, like a specific type of surgery. He might have been the first, but like to remove conjoined twins, that's been done before. But he did break new ground in his field. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it was at the brain. Their brain was connected, and he did brain surgery. And miraculously, when he separated them, the other twin
survived.
Was able to the brain grew.
Yeah. But Fanatic, you're muted. You've been muted for like a little bit. You're still muted. What's going on?
I muted two different ways. My bad. It's called Craniopagus twins, or however you pronounce it, and it was the first successful one of that.
Yeah, of that.
That's what he did.
Yeah. But no. But no, yeah, a lot of people don't know exactly. Yeah. But okay, so
yeah.
Well, go ahead, Katrana. You can finish your point, please.
No, so yeah, I think it's all just like part of this whole thing where like I don't know, I'm a lot of black people I grew up with like had their fathers like within my family. Like there's not a single person that doesn't have their father. Unless like there's only one case in like which like the father wants to be around, but like the father's just not great, so like they don't want him around. But beyond that, like, and I have like 14 aunts and uncles and there's only one situation. Obviously, this is anecdotal, but like especially with a sample size of 14 different aunts and uncles, there should be at least one. Okay, no, but there's not. And I just really think it's strange that like just we're always prescribed like the worst traits all the time, like and I think this is just like the whole single father thing is like just another place where it's like bad traits. Yeah, let's give it to black people. Yeah, you don't know your dad. No, I really do. Thank you.
Legend,
Thanks.
Legend, would
think-
you like to add
I
something?
think. Yeah, can y'all hear
Yeah,
me?
go ahead, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the important thing is that we have to acknowledge like where exactly we getting this propaganda and this information from, and a lot of times that's from CNN, Caucasian, Nazi Network. We got BS, NBC, uh, NBC, which I call nothing but Caucasians, and I say raccoons on here or no? Is that good?
Raccoons.
But anyway, we have to take into account the source of this information and the propaganda. We know the media, the mainstream media, is basically just focusing on the negative aspects.
Is it
Of how
even like the news
black
though? Like
people.
really? Isn't it more like just like the writers and like all the various TV shows, right? Like, you've got like a group of people who are paid to write the scripts for all this media that we consume, like, NCIS or like, I don't know, anything.
Yeah.
And it's those folks who perpetrate the stereotype. It's
I
like,
think it's common.
it's a combination, but like, when was the last time that CNN did like a news article on like single fathers, for example? Like, you don't see that in the news very often. I feel like it's just like a writer's thing more so than anything else.
You
Yeah,
don't
I
think
think
that
it's
has to
media.
do with the ownership, like the owners of the networks, like CNN and NBC and things like that, like New York Times and all that?
I
Well, I
mean,
mean,
I don't really see it necessarily being like an issue that's even really brought up like in the news. Like I don't think it's like in today's news, black people don't have dads.
right, like,
Okay, back to
yeah,
the
like you don't
talk.
see
You
that.
know, I think it, but I think a lot of it is like really weird, not self-fulfilling prophecy, but kind of like quite often, within black media in which black people are the writers and producers and everything. For some reason, we're still written as like,
Yeah.
she doesn't have a dad. Like what? Okay.
The classic story of the kid that grew up in the hood without his father, but gained strength from it and like went on to become like an NBA player.
Oh,
Stuff
yeah, yeah,
Sure.
and just all this
Yeah.
different types of media, and it's like I think there's just not enough of a diversity of what like actual black experience is within media, and like that's why we're able to just go ahead and like prescribe like that's a holistic like black experience, and like even within that, there's never enough nuance in the fact that like not all of us are the same like flavor of black here. Like I'm sure within this room there's like are like three different types of ethnocultural black, but like we're just seen as like black holistic. Black people don't. Excuse me, like I'm Caribbean. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Uh, so I don't know. Like I think all of this is just like more of the whole thing where they just like to lump us all together and say like we do all the bad stuff, and it's like okay, thank you, I guess.
So I was looking, and it did seem like there was a story in CNN in 2016 where they were talking about breaking the absent father, breaking the cycle of absentee fathers, and of course they used a black person to talk about it. But one of the things that they did go into is something that I actually do agree with. And they were talking about, given the fact that culturally black men tend to spend a lot more quality time with their children in co-residential situations, then I would say that if in these cases where we have these abandoned father issues, a lot of these things come from prison. So when it comes to the case of my father, he was in and out. He was constantly going in and out. The reason why he was constantly going in and out was because of prison. He did various amounts of stints in prison with various whatever. And so during those times, he tended not to be there. But it wasn't because he didn't want to necessarily be there. And I think then that has a humongous impact because there's plenty of young men who might father a child, and then if that young man happens to be kept out of or disenfranchised or gets involved with some types of unsavory activity because of economic depression, then I would imagine in those cases that person not being in their kid's life, they're gonna show up on the statistic, but it doesn't actually point to the fact of the disparate policing, the disparate sentencing, and the economic situations that we're in that are pretty unique oftentimes. And I think that is the actual framing. A lot of times the reason why you have absent fatherhood, I would say in a large amount of these cases, I wish I had the data in front of me, I will look it up later.
I have something for you on that, actually. 63% of federal inmates report having a kid. 52% of state inmates have kids. So like half of all prisoners, half of all prisoners have children at home.
That's crazy. And of course, you obviously know that blacks make up the majority of the prison, right? So then at that point, when you start looking at these figures and you look at this information, and then you start seeing where are these parents not, why are these people not in their children's lives? And I think that's the reason. Very, very often. I don't think it's so much about culturally not wanting to be involved or culturally just abandoning or morally abandoning their families. I think it has a lot to do with a lot of the prison impositions placed on us by our corrupt government.
Yeah, and I think we also have to remember that what the media is, right? It's a tool. At the end of the day, it provides entertainment to us, but at the end of the day, the media, the news, all of it is just a tool. Yeah, it's a tool that's used to push what somebody wants people to think or believe, right? And at the time, the perception is that they always want people to look at us negatively, right? How many times have you met someone from another country and they talk to you, they're like, oh, well, we thought black people were all like this, because that's what we see on our TVs in our country, right? So, yeah, I think it's...
Yeah, as somebody that like myself, I typically in my last like couple experiences, I've always dated people that are like quite recent immigrants from like different continents. Like they were like I was really having to do a lot to just teach them about like what being black is. And then they would say things like, "Oh, you're pretty good for like what I thought like the black people were like based off of what TV was like back in my home country." And I'm like, "That's nice. Well, I didn't come up to you saying I thought you were doing X, Y, and Z. So like, why? What? Like, you recognize that like media portrays you bad. So like, why would you think that I'm gonna like, all my families would be like, okay." Like I, I don't know. Like I dated a Russian guy, and he like asked me if like all my cousins' names were Ray Ray, and I was like, cool.
I think it's racist.
I mean, can you blame him though? Can you blame him though? I met the nicest guy from Korea, and the first time I talked to him, he said he swore I was gonna rob him. And I asked him why he felt like that. He's like, dude, there's no black people where I'm from in Korea, and the times that we do see a black person, it's on the TV where it's some shoot 'em up drug dealer. So at the end, but after I told him, no, that's not how it is, he understood, and we warmed up and became friends. So at the end of the day, I can't blame somebody if that's the perception that they have of you. Now, if they continue to have that after you talk to them, I don't know, but
yeah. Like, and for me, like, obviously, I wasn't mad. Like, I wasn't like, how dare you think that? Because like, what else are people supposed to expect? And like, I think like, especially within America, there are full like populations, like there's states that don't have very many black people. So then the first time that you go ahead and like interact with a black person, this is why people are like always are able to say advocate for the whole idea that like, oh, perhaps they were doing something wrong all the time, because like the only situations in which you see black people in the media is when they're doing something wrong. So like,
the media does do that to us a lot, but I don't think I can remove all of the onus off of the individuals. Like the media can display whatever the freak you want to, but if you're walking around thinking literally every black person is going to rob you, I know you got to know that you're just not thinking. That's really what that is. I can't give you that excuse. That's too much, man. Like,
but it's not news media; it's entertainment media, right?
Both. So, like,
I think that's the thing to think about. Like, people model their behavior. It's propaganda. I agree with you, but like what I'm saying is like it's like people model their behavior off of entertainment media. They see it and they're like, oh, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is how I'm supposed to interact, et cetera,
And
right?
that's their
Like,
fault. And I can't.
yeah, it is their fault. Like they have to become less ignorant, right? Like ignorance is bliss, and people have a hard time working their way out of these patterns. So, like on one sense, yeah, it's a bunch of bullshit, and like a lot of it is stupid. But on the other hand, we have to be patient and educational because a lot of people need to be woke, right? At the end of the day, that's what we're like. That's the job, is to wake people up and let them know that this type of thing happens, and this is like what reality is versus what you think is reality.
The media is not entertainment, it's propaganda, psychological, informational warfare.
No disagreement. And I think like I just have a hard time when it comes to making excuses for people for blatant, willful ignorance, especially considering the fact that there's not a group of people outside the United States that hasn't been. I'm sorry, there isn't a single group of non-white person that is not aware of all of the racial stereotypes that are used to denigrate their people. Chinese people are very well aware of, like, when America was propagating the idea of the sick men of China, when they were using that for everyone, just the United States, when it was the British that were doing that as well. Like, they were very well aware of that, or all of the various stereotypes that they experience even from Japanese people, and vice versa, or that, like, there's all of that infighting amongst them. So they know that not everybody fits the stereotypes that are associated with them. I've never encountered a person of color that is not aware of various stereotypes that United States holds against them because of our propaganda. So for someone to know that, and someone to encounter that, and then say, well, yeah, I just kind of accepted what the media said about you, even though I absolutely reject the idea of all of the things that the media says about me, that just sounds like you're just being willfully ignorant. You're just not thinking hard enough. I can't give you a pass.
There's just not like a plethora of enough like alternate sources where they can see like what all of us like how we actually do act outside of like mainstream media. Like you know, let's say the only type of media that I really think that goes ahead and gives enough like nuance to the different types of like I guess a lot of the different experiences is like the Boondocks, but if you don't understand enough of the context, that just more reinforcing stereotypes. You're just not like enough stuff for someone to go ahead and like do the education. Like the only reason why I was able to go ahead and figure out the amount of stuff that I know about Indian culture is like via speaking to people that are Indian. Like it's not like TV is really giving me any type of alternate thing besides Indian guy real good at tech, very nerd, bad girl, you know?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't
It's
know.
really hard for
People can do
people.
the same thing that you just said. They can, learn from experience. Mother is if the repetition. What do they say about learning? Repetition is the mother of learning, and the father would be life experience. Get out there and learn for yourself and see for yourself.
Right. I mean, I think is like it also takes like a lot of introspection to be able to identify how you've been tainted by propaganda, right? Like you have to actually like think about what you know and question whether it's a bias or not. And like most people are not equipped to do that. Most people will stick by their biases like through and through because it's what they're comfortable with, it's what they know, and it takes a lot of work to like break that sort of cycle. And it's not easy when you're constantly being exposed to that propaganda while you're trying to break yourself of that cycle. Because like it's in the media still. Like you turn on the TV and it's gonna be the same old stuff, right?
Uh,
It's not changing.
Also, you have to like
It's not-
care to do it as well, like care to learn. Somebody said previously, like if you just live in an area where there's like no black, where there's like not a lot of black people, and all you see is like the popular media figures, and you have the internet. Sure, you could like search like African American history and all that, and truly learn for yourself. But like, where's the drive? Like why would you do like just not a lot of people are interested in learning about other people. Like it's easier to just digest popular media.
That's true. It's absolutely true.
Yeah, and think of it on like the person, like I said, the guy from Korea that said he never met a black person before, right? He was really fresh, like his English was tell. Think of it on like a more like on a primal level, right? something that you don't know. How did we survive whenever we came against something? The reason we survived is the reason we beat out all the other humanoids and the Homo sapiens continued on is because of our inclinations to destroy things that don't look like us. The fear of things that don't look like us, we have a fear of them. So if you're a Korea and the only black people you see are negative, right? And then you come over to this whole nother country, your first thought is going to be survival. So what is your survival? What has the times that you've seen black people taught you is that black people were negative. That's what the perception that you're gonna come over here on. And I think I keep saying perception, but I think it's all perception. We've been doing a lot better at changing these narratives. I think there was a commercial. I don't know if you guys watched the NAACP awards that BET had early in the year, but it had. I don't mess with BET. I'll just say that just because I think it sucks. But there was a very powerful commercial, very 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 powerful commercial that they had during the NAACP awards. And I tried my best to search the internet and see if I could find footage of this commercial because I would love to share it with, but I could not. But basically the commercial it started off showing maybe 5 different like little split scenes of 5 different people living their life, right? They had like a woman with they were all black people, but all black individuals. They had like a woman with like 3 kids around her while she was grocery shopping. They had like a dude with dreadlocks wearing a hoodie running through the rain towards the store. All of the situations were vague, really vague, where you had to, derive an idea of what you think is happening in the scene. And then at the end of the commercial, it showed like the guy with the hoodie on, the dreadlocks was going to the pharmacy to pick up medicine for his sick sibling. And then the lady, she wasn't single. Her husband had went out in the rain to get the car and pull it up to the parking lot for her, right? And there was just all these just negative scenarios where somebody would derive these negative connotations before actually knowing the full situation. And that was really powerful, I believe, because I even found myself thinking, kind of having these unconscious predispositions towards these people in the very beginning of the commercial. And it's like, dang, is it really that ingrained? Is it really that ingrained for us to feel negatively about ourselves, right? So the perception is, and the final words of the commercial was change the narrative in all caps, and I'm 100% on that. Changing the narrative. That's the push that we should be going for.
So I'll tell you what. My mom is foreign born, married my black father, right? They've been married for 35 years now, and she still is working her way through stereotypes. This is not easy. Like, they've been married for 35 years. My mom willfully married a black man. Oh, no, I'm sorry, 36 years. And, yep, a lot of it's still there. Like, it takes a lot of time to work your way through the type of programming that's out there, right?
Programming is very strong, and the U.S. government does it the best. So saying that you can't, so I think saying that you can't give someone else leeway on for believing in the hype, I guess you could say, even though black people ourselves end up believing in the hype sometimes.
And
we all have it in us, right?
Yeah,
we're all exposed to it. We have to remind ourselves that
we're just as wrong when we do it too, though. Like,
yeah.
What you guys are doing is pointing to the various mechanisms that our government has orchestrated in order to create these myths, and the media has orchestrated in perpetuating a lot of these myths and a lot of these harmful portrayals, right? Like, I get where they got it. There's no excuse for maintaining it, and there's no excuse for having it. Because even if the media does that, especially as a grown man, if you haven't learned at this point not to judge not to be prejudiced, right? Like, these are really, really, really hyper basic ideas. If you haven't learned as a 30-year-old or 25-year-old or an 18-year-old person that you can't judge a book by its cover, and I you, that simple aphorism exists in pretty much every language. If you haven't learned that yet, such that you would maintain such an insanely harmful and prejudiced and pejorative perspective of a human being, that is a moral failing on your part. You have no excuse at this age. I don't care if the media is like putting it down your throat. I don't care if you've had experiences in which people have literally corroborated the stereotype. The fact that you look at literally every person that way is immediately a failure. There are Barack Obamas. There are Ben Carsons. There are how many black senators do we have?
Bill Cosby.
Right, like there's so many different examples of black positive portrayals. You are being selectively biased at that point and choosing to maintain a negative stereotype specifically against about black people in that scenario, and there is no excuse for it, because just like you have all of those things, you still got My Father and Me and all of the and Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and all these other
things. Yep, Family Matters.
Right, that show was insanely popular. It still aired around the world.
A Different World, man, was super powerful.
That too. So if you're able to ignore all of that, because I know that the vast majority of our media is disgusting. You got Denzel, one of the most bankable actors of all time, who plays how many positive roles. Now, he did get that Oscar for Training Day. I mean, we know why that is, right? But the fact of the matter is, you do have like Sidney Poitier, right? There's all of these positive portrayals. You ignore all of that, and then we're just going to say, well, yeah, but it's the media's fault because the media did it. No, that's your fault. You ignored all of the positive stereotypes and focused on only the negative. That's selective bias, and that's your moral failing. I'm not giving you a pass there.
Well, negative bias
those stereotypes about the white Europeans, about the Italians being gangsters and thugs, all that is glorified. So, but you like, come on.
Yep, that's when it's them. It's a positive.
When it's white people who do the same stuff that the bad black people do, it's all good and it's glorified. Oh, I want to be like that. But when black people do it and that's portrayed in the media and the TV, oh hell no, that's what black people do.
They're all thugs.
Yeah, I'll just say one thing and then I'll let Ezzy go. Is that my point on understanding was for foreign nationals that literally only they're only they don't have access. I mean, of course they could go on the internet and look up the Bill Cosby show, but this a 40-year-old guy might not be in Korea thinking about, oh, let me go find out about the Bill Cosby show, right? That's where my understanding is. Like if you're in the U.S. and you're exposed to all these different resources, yeah, I understand.
Well,
it's
Bill
like
Cosby kind of got tainted, though, didn't he? Like that.
So
now,
yeah.
I mean, like that.
Let's go to Azzy, who's been waiting. Please, Azzy.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. So all the things we're saying is good. It's just that we need to be able to hold those who have not been participating in what we're saying accountable. Those who have been the poor fathers, who have been poor mothers, who have put themselves over the family, who and I'm saying like, and then you have to take in account like how Madlab brought up that his father married a woman. I don't know if she's a black woman, but I don't know where your mother's from.
Mideast.
But okay, so even so, there's this push. There's been a rise in marriage outside of your race. There's been a rise in marriage inside of the race. We are now refocusing. There's a revitalization into why family units are important, and that has been on the rise. In fact, it was just the government made it illegal for you to even marry outside your race, so that you were just stuck. Or matter of fact, we are redefining marriage. We reestablishing the value in marriage, and that is affecting how we. That's affecting whether or not it's lowering the amount of single family, but the single partner, the single mother or father also has more resources now than they ever had in the past. Now, we were talking about media and how we look at things. Yeah, it's always been about optics. In fact, and if I'm thinking of like biblically, if anybody was ever single, it was upon the community to then provide some type of support for that single person if somebody died, or if the mother or father was absent. There was more community. so I see what we're saying about people. I do agree with Fanatic that we can't just give people passes if they're not going about the, they're not doing the due diligence, they're not doing the critical thinking as to whether or not this person could be good, despite what they look like, despite what they've seen on TV. But then again, there are people who are taught by their fathers and mothers to hate. And I do have to say that I've met a couple of those people, and though it took a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of just civility, just to show my best self for that person, so that hey, what you've been taught is wrong. So yeah, there are those, and then all these things kind of come together, and they build up into what we have today, where where people didn't value family, where people didn't value skin color, where people didn't value black people. It's just a lot of things going on. And then if we ever get a chance to talk about the next few topics, Israel versus Palestine, or the fact of African American language, like there's just a lack of value and a lack of a total disrespect for us,
Really
Oh, that's
stigmatized.
I
oh
said a
that
stupid thing. She sounds disgusting, but have her call me though. Like that was just a crass joke. I thought it was funny. That's absolutely disgusting. I refuse to be or date long term any person that has that kind of thought process. I think that's absolutely absurd. I think it's again dehumanizing. I think that kind of stuff is gross, and it happens so frequently. And there are these different generational problems. Like for like Asian girls will date black men. They will not marry black men because marrying white men is a status symbol. And so if the ones who are risque enough to date black men will only do it on the low, you will not meet their parents. Sometimes they don't even want to call you like an actual item. It's more like just this thing that they will do on the side. Same thing happens very frequently when it comes to Hispanic women. And in the cases, because every now and then there's a lot more of that'll happen where they'll actually marry them. But even in those cases, their families hate them, and it's vice versa. One of my sisters married a Guatemalan dude, and his mother like had this perception that my sister was some girl on welfare that was going to be taking his money. Now my sister out earned him like dramatically. She's been working since she was 16 years freaking old. She worked for the bank. She was doing exceedingly well. She bought her first house at like 24 years old. She's doing amazing. But her mother, which was an illegal immigrant, and brought him over here, and then had a perception that she was going to be using him. And it's like, wait, what are you freaking talking about? He literally got his citizenship through her. And it's just like the amount of stigmatization and the amount of these negative stereotypes that they will pin on you while dating you but refusing to marry you is absolutely absurd. And it's with white women too. White women have that very often. It just seems like literally everybody wants to be with us. Nobody wants to be with us. And
I mean,
it's
it's a
just
matter
like
of respect, right? Like if someone doesn't respect you, don't date them. And like there's a lot
Oh,
of
I've done do
people
that.
who like were into me but didn't give me the respect. And you just
Yeah,
have to turn that down. Like that's
like
the way to do it.
I've been done like jumping through hoops for people. Like, bro, like one time, like this girl tried to get me to like cut my hair because it was like too long. Like, nah, fuck that shit, bro. Like,
Exactly.
I'm not done.
Exactly. Like no, like at first I was a people pleaser for sure. Like the first few relationships I really, really tried. And then I realized that that's not the way to like I mean
Not
you want
healthy.
to try for someone who's worth it, of course, right? But like trying hard to secure a relationship is not necessarily worth it. It's having that relationship to begin with and then trying hard for that relationship that you naturally have. It's like a distinction. I don't know. Like it's like really crazy
Yeah.
though that like this is
Yeah,
happening universally to everyone, right? Like this is like a real thing. Like it's not just. I mean, I thought it was just like maybe I don't know. Maybe I guess I was stupid and thinking that it might have been just like suburban Michigan or whatever. But
no,
this is
it
like everywhere.
yeah, it's really, really frustrating. And honestly, like, and you think this is just an American thing? Like, this stuff even propagates within like the Caribbean. Like, it's crazy. Like, there's in like the country that I lived in, it was essentially like you better have money, and if you don't have enough, like if you don't have money, if he's white, it's fine. Like, so like there were like girls I would go to high school with, and like my family was more of a nonprofit person, so I didn't have that much money, and I was within my classroom, I was too dark to be attractive. Because obviously, like within the Caribbean, the people that will have money are going to be the people that are, the most like mixed and stuff. So I was too dark to be attractive. And then whenever like like white missionary girls would come, or like Dominican girls, or just like people that are lighter, everyone would like chase after them and like just fucking run through hoops to go speak to them. And I was like, that girl is objectively ugly. Like, like what? Like, are you guys chasing after the missionary girl from Mississippi? Like, what? It, she, okay, and like I would always just be like so confused. It's just like, oh, this is
Yeah, and even like, and they like
They
you said,
really
like
are.
even Caribbean parents like perpetuate. Like my friend is Haitian, and his parents like were for a time refused to let him have long hair. He could never like act, let's say this as cruelly as possible. Like he would like they would always like say like, oh, stop acting like hoodish or like something like that. Like just general like black stereotypes. Like try to avoid it like at all costs. Like his Haitian parents tried to do. It was like insane. Like to some extent, we perpetuated it ourselves. Like,
yeah. Like literally within my own household. When I was living in the Caribbean, I dated somebody that was also like from the same country, and they were darker than me, and my mom would just continuously be like, you're gonna mess up our hair, right? And I was like,
Hate that.
Are you
"What?"
Trinidadian?
I hate that.
No, I'm not Trinidadian.
No.
But yeah, my mom, like, it was a thing. Like, she was just continuously like, your hair is loose and he has really nappy hair. You're gonna fuck up our hair. And I was like, who gives a shit? Like, it's
That was your
random
mother, you said?
atom protein coming out of your fucking
So that
head.
was your mom?
That was my mom. Yeah, that was my mom that was like telling me continuously about like how I was messing up our genetics, like if I would actually marry this person. And I was like, oh, well, there was this other person I was dating that was like, had better genetics to you, but also he like used to tell me how like fucking big my nose was and how like huge my feet are. And he would consistently tell me that like I'm eating too much. And the one that's like has the nappy hair is like actually treating me really nice. But you know what? You're right. Like genetics are really important. So I'll just keep on kicking it with people that are being emotionally abusive because protein. You're right. You got it. Like man. Oh, there's.
Apologies that you were exposed to that type of toxic self.
It's just kind of something that like with time I've had to go ahead and like try to like fix. Like just kind of like tell myself like good hair isn't a thing. It's just it's a metric of how close is your hair to looking like white people's hair. Like that's what good hair is. Like the closer it is to looking like like the people that enslaved you, then you got it. Like if it's just looks just like theirs, you won. And it's like, man, we have so many like weird beauty standards within the Black community, and as well as like and like we kind of go around saying like I don't want to date a Black person, someone that's too dark because then my kids are gonna come out too dark. While at the meantime, like we're also like, why don't people want to like within our we get upset that people don't want to take us home, and I'm like, we're really like fucking over our own selves. Like it's yeah.
yeah. And this.
Anti-blackness
Go.
internalized just as much. I was gonna say, look, I don't like saying this in white spaces. This isn't a white space. It's just in a white. There's some white audiences, but because I don't like giving them ammunition. Not all of them, just some of them. But I would say that just as much as I have to decry the way all of the other racists do that to us, I do believe that we do that to us, to us in two different ways. One, we have the internalized racism, where we will do our best to eradicate any forms of blackness from ourselves, and like because I did that as a kid, as a younger person, where I would like change the way that I spoke and try to speak as properly as possible, and I always felt like I had to be an ambassador whenever I'd be around white people. Like I got to show them that I'm not that kind of black person, whatever. Da, da, da. So then there's that kind of thing that we do to ourselves, and then there's also the kind of racism where even within black spaces, where black people will be talking about like, yeah, man, we can't have like someone like colorism is super duper alive. I don't know. I feel like it's died a little bit, at least from when I was a kid. But I remember as a kid, it was insane how like we would there were like just anti-black things, and if the darker someone was, then we would
the trickle down effects of the brown paper bag test.
Yep.
Yeah. And this is more like a regional thing, but like in the South, like it's already stereotyped to where if you have like a Southern accent, you're stupid. But if you're black and have a Southern accent, like there's no getting away with that. Like people just automatically view you as just unintelligent.
But not if you're white though.
Yeah,
That's what's crazy. Not if you're white.
Yeah, Jim Bob's still seen as a scholar.
It's wild.
I was just saying, like, that's literally like a whole question that we have here is about the whole, AAVE versus Southern accents.
Oh yeah, we might as well get into that. Prime, you want to take us over there? I don't know.
Yeah, sure. So, well, we'll go on to our next topic. Thank you, my honest, for being patient. We're having some crazy tech issues today. But okay. So, topic. Let's see if I can bring it up. Okay. Yeah. So, okay. This is from our friend Katrana, and thank you for helping us come up with this. But anyway, recently a TikTok video was released that featured a collection of young white Southern women listing the colleges they would enroll in. To some, this video seems incomprehensible due to their Southern accent. Difficult regional accents are not uncommon, but how does this compare to how Ebonics is treated in the States? Ebonics seems to have a lower status culturally, but is that fair? How should the black community treat Ebonics? Should this unique manner of speaking be embraced or shunned? And yeah, there's a video here. I'll put it in chat.
I linked it too.
Okay, yeah. So okay, Katrina already linked it. Go ahead and take a look at that. It's quite short, but I listened to this video and I might, when Katrina presented it to me, the first thing I said, I couldn't understand what these women were saying at all, and she compared that to Ebonics, so I thought it was really interesting. Legend, if you could maybe mute yourself, we're getting a lot of static, like a lot of that air. If you just mute yourself in Discord, and yeah, thanks. And we'll just no, not in StreamYard. Okay, hold on. Yeah, if you could just mute yourself in Discord, in the Discord program, and not in, yeah. Okay, and we'll get back to it. So, Fanatic, did you get to see that video, that TikTok video? Fanatic, can you hear me? Maybe you can't hear me. Hold on. Hold on. Did he pop out?
Yeah, his audio.
Oh boy, you are also unmuted.
Himself.
Okay. All right.
He's definitely making faces that look like.
Watching that video, what the hell were they saying?
Okay.
I'm sorry. What were you asking me a question?
I was asking if you had seen the video. But
I just did right now. That was OD.
Okay.
I've seen it.
Yeah.
Do you want me to go in on the topic?
Yeah.
Sure.
And for everyone else, if you just look at that video, it's in Twitch chat. It's also in the group DM under this topic, the topic 2 or topic 3, I think. But go ahead, Fanatic.
Yeah, I think that video was absurd. Their accents were absolutely ridiculous. But I think that very much speaks to the topic. When white people do something, it is not stigmatized. We will look at that and we will say, oh, like, whatever, like, they're country people, they're getting educated. We're not going to look at them as like hicks or anything, any other like deplorable or pejorative. But when black people have accents, we immediately assume that they're ignorant, and it's absolutely absurd. Like, we'll look at white people with really thick accents as oil men, right? Like, oh, they're oil men. They made a lot of money. Whereas if it's a black person, it's like, oh no, this is a thug, right? Furthermore, I remember like them talking about like Ebonics, right? Like the phrase Ebonics, and how like a lot of that was based on like the way that black people spoke in that time, because English was our second language. And so there were a lot of grammatical sentence structures that had carried on from their native tongue. And so then the way that they spoke was indicative of that. And so people it wasn't like they got a formal education such that they would learn to distinguish these two, right? Like if you try to speak Spanish in the same way that you speak English, you're going to mess up the conjugation and you're going to mess up the structures. And same thing with Japanese is very much not structured in the same way that English is, as far as like where the subject goes and so on and so forth. But when you do that, when Black people did that, they denied us an education and then made fun of the fact that we spoke differently, even though we were speaking what was grammatically a mixture of like native languages and English. And I think it's absolutely absurd. Those accents were absolutely thick as freak, and I guarantee you those girls aren't going to be looked at as anything pejorative because of it.
Thank you, Marks. Just like a minute long introduction, yeah.
Yeah, so I just saw the video. As a Southerner, like most of my family is Southern, I was able to understand most, not all the video, but I can understand you freaking Northerners. An intellectual brain, you can't understand it. But yeah, the way like Ebonics is like compared to like Southern, to like the Southern dialect, I mainly agree with Fanatic. It's mainly just like a bias, like we adapted to our environment around it, and it's not really that much different. But I'll go later on to that in like the main panel.
Thank you, Madeline.
So I'm looking this up right now, but there's actually a trend where Southerners are actually taking classes to remove their accents so they can sound like Mid-Atlantic, et cetera, because it helps, like, get them hired. So I think there is something to. I don't think that Southerners are. It's not the same, but I do think that there is like a little bit of a stereotype and a little bit of a problem when your accent is hard to understand. Now, I understood what those girls were saying because I guess I'm just used to hearing accent in English. Um, but I mean, as far as how this relates to Ebonics, I think there is something to be said for how, as a society, we are biased against folks who have an accent or have a culture that's different from ours. I mean, I don't know if it's obvious or not, but I was like completely assimilated, right? Like I don't have, I don't actually have very much Ebonics in me right now. And as far as how this has impacted me as a person versus cousins of mine, I mean, no, I mean, honestly, like all my cousins, I think like maybe my family as a whole, like my extended family, might have just shunned the Ebonics altogether, and we don't really have as much of that. I don't know. It's interesting because I think a lot of us did pretty well for ourselves overall. So maybe there's something to it. Like maybe there is like so the stereotype is so severe in our society that I do think that it impacts our ability to not just get jobs but be taken seriously. And I think that's a big problem. Actually, I don't think that's fair. So that's my take. I'm all over the place. I'm working my way through this right now.
Yeah. Legend, I had to unmute you because we're getting a lot of a background noise. So in the future, you need to, if you'd like to talk, just raise your hand and I'll unmute you. But anyway, I'm gonna unmute you now, and please give us your thoughts on this.
All right. Apologies about that. I don't know what's going on, but I could really understand. And I'm from the north. I'm from New York City, so it was actually interesting. I could understand what they were saying. I'm in agreement with mostly everybody as far as perception about how when a white person does talks like that, oh, it's cute, it's funny, they just got a southern accent, southern hospitality. In comparison to a black person, is like, oh, you an idiot, you stupid, you whatever. But as far as it relating to Ebonics, it's funny how black people are demonized by how they talk. At the same time, I've seen plenty of white people, quote unquote, trying to talk black. So it's like, it's just really weird and funny how, they demonize us for what we do. At the same time, white people, you pretty much steal, appropriate, and try to do everything we do. So, that's just really my take on it.
Thanks so much. All right, Katrana, I'll save you for last on this. But go ahead, Earl.
Yeah, I think that that statistic that Mad Lad had shared about Southern people taking classes to learn how to speak, I guess, more proper. I mean, that sounds outrageous. I would never, absolutely never do that. I'm from the South. I'm from Georgia, and I now live in Texas. And for sure, I understand. If there's one thing, if you know you're in a corporate setting or whatever, and people can't understand you because of how strong your accent is, but I don't think that someone should be judged just because they don't sound or speak a certain way for sure. And I don't think that it's healthy for anybody to go out of their way to change the way that they speak just in order to assimilate into the whatever social circle that they're trying to get into. I experienced this like when I graduated college, and a lot of my friends that had dreadlocks and were growing dreadlocks with me, they were like, "Hey man, you cutting your dreads before you start doing these interviews and things?" I'm like, no man, why would I do that? Why would I change myself for this job and work and make money for these people when they would discriminate against me just because of my hair, right? So why would I go and take a class in order to speak more proper if and work for somebody if they're going to discriminate on the way that I speak? I don't think, like I said, there is a line that has to be drawn. You do need to be able to communicate with someone else properly, efficiently, I guess is a better word. But I don't think that you should just be judged on the way that you speak.
Azzy?
Ebonics.
Azzy, can you hear us?
Oh, I didn't know if you called on me or not. Um, so if you know about the Ebonics came around 1970s, 1973. A group of black scholars coined the term to avoid being having the negative connotation of being speaking non-standard Negro English. That's where Ebonics comes from. It's more of like African American. If you think of African American vernacular, African American English vernacular, it's just so for the video. I see that so yeah, black people are demonized for having a southern accent. But I was reading the comments in that video and they were mauling these girls. Like I could understand what they were saying. The first girl, she was mumbling, like she had food in her mouth. But the other girls, like I could understand, but they were mauling these girls to death. Like they need speech therapy. I don't know what they're saying. I'm like, that's generally because they have no interactions with, you know, like southern communities or people from the south. But when you come to Ebonics, Ebonics is a very when you know when you look at it, you look at the origins. It's a mix of like African dialects and the southern dialects of the at the time. Like I was watching another TikTok video where a doctor was saying, "I'm from Nigeria, and there's certain sounds, certain letters that we don't pronounce in our original language." So when you make sense of that and you combine it with what people say with the accents of today, it makes sense. We are just combining what we had with what we were around, and that's generally most people do that. Whatever, like when I was around my Caribbean cohorts in college, I would pick up parts of their accents, and while I was around them, I was listening to them, I was speaking more like them. And it got to a point where somebody from Jamaica thought I was from Jamaica. I'm like, oh no, I'm from here. Like I'm more American than most people, but yeah, it's I find it very it's just like how they treat view black people, the negative stereotypes. If we're focusing on how black people with Ebonics, it's just you know what they tried to do when black students use the term Ebonics in the college setting. They would just say, hey, well, now we need to teach you standard English, we need to teach you how to speak like the rest of us. It's like not really. There are people who code switch, but that's of their choice. That's okay. It's a sort of like a I'm here, I make people comfortable, or it makes me comfortable when I'm in this area, or when I'm in certain environments I speak this certain way. I'm like, yeah, these are all choices we make. I don't think anybody should be forced to speak another accent or another dialect, because it's all colloquial. It's community. It's our culture, and it's just another instance where people are demeaning our culture, demeaning where we come from. Despite the diaspora. Like I said, like Ebonics is just a mix of African dialects. You can find it anywhere from Nigeria and Ghana or Jamaica, with just the southern. Like, we learned it from white people. You know what I'm saying? My dad, we were watching a video of them having like a little corral in the back, and they were racing cars. My dad said, "Yeah, my grandparents sound just like them white people. Like, we probably learned from them." Yeah.
Karana.
Yeah. So for a lot of things when it comes to language, it's really just like centered around power dynamics. The only thing that's the difference between your dialect being a language is whether or not like they want to accept it. Um, so same thing goes for things like accents. The only like reason why one accent is seen as more acceptable than the other is just because someone said it was so. Um, so yeah, like I'm sure, especially since a lot of these girls are going to university within southern places, and obviously not every university does interviews, but like they spoke the way they spoke during the interview, and that was cool. And they were like, "That sounds real nice. Yeehaw to you too, brother. You're accepted." Um, and whereas with southern black accents like that wouldn't have been accepted. Um, so I think like and I guess it's complicated, but even within black households, like people will make sure like don't forget to learn how to code switch because you're gonna have to. Whereas like other groups of people do not need to code switch just because they're in different spaces. Um, so I think like this just kind of goes to exemplify that like, hey, supremacy exists everywhere in the way you speak, in the way you date, in the way you look, in the way you eat. Damn, that rhymed. Cool. Yeah, I think it's really strange. Like this video was insane to me. I saw it the first time and I fucking keeled over. I was like, where am I? Like, what? Like they let you in places because it's so fucking strange. Whereas like I can see that this is really a close proximity to like what someone would go ahead and like call Ebonics, and that wouldn't be as accepted. So just overall, I think AAVE should be accepted because like what exactly does it say about somebody beyond the fact that I grew up in like I live in a society, like it doesn't fucking say shit else about like how good I can read. um, I'll just leave it open to that.
So, yeah, so like I said, Katarana was so kind as to share that video with me. And when I first looked at it, and I still haven't. When you don't have a TikTok account, and I don't have one, like it doesn't let you see the comments. So I didn't know what other people thought of it. I just like watched it myself, and I couldn't make heads or tails as to what a lot of the women were saying. And like I said in the question, like regional dialects are not like an uncommon thing. Like if you ask different Europeans to ask them like what others are saying like within their same language, like no, they'll have problems with that too. Like this is just like a thing that happens. But I thought it was interesting when Katarana wanted to compare this with Ebonics. I thought it was a fascinating question because I don't know. Maybe I have a different opinion than you all because one. Okay, so we're back to Southern accent for a moment. Those Southern accents, people were told like some people are trying to get rid of that. Well, that kind of makes sense, right? Like if you notice, it doesn't matter like where you watch the news. Like it doesn't matter where you watch the news in the country. Even if you go into the South, you'll always hear a North like Atlantic accent, like a Northeast accent, because that is the most easily understood accent in general. The dialect works no matter where you are. Everyone can understand you. But like if you have a Southern accent, obviously here, on the news, people may not be able to understand the newscasters. So that's just like all around, all around. That kind of makes sense. I mean, it's the most understandable one. And beyond that, when it comes to Ebonics, it's like, well, what if they can't understand? I think for a lot of African American Ebonics, it's actually quite understandable. I think the bigger problem is not it is more that like that English is just so different, like within a business setting. Like it's just it's so different from like what everyone else is saying, that it makes communications like more difficult. Like I could imagine like for instance like think of writing Ebonics in like a business email. Like with that, like if people were saying, "Oh, you can speak Ebonics, fine," but like think of writing that in a business email. Like, would you send that out in a business email? I wouldn't. Like, did that?
I wouldn't. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, yeah. If it was like for my own business, I wouldn't want someone to send that out. Like, it doesn't look professional within like the environment. Like, will the other person get that? Like, whoever you're saying, if you're saying this to a client, will they understand what's going on? No. So then on the other side, well, wouldn't it be better to speak more standard English within a business environment? What do y'all think of this?
So listen, someone I saw a meme and it was like so beautiful in that it said, if white people can pronounce Daenerys Targaryen, then they can absolutely pronounce your name. They're just not trying. And I feel like
you blinked out. Your audio disappeared. I don't know what happened to your audio, buddy. Just are you pushed to talk or something? I don't know. There you go. We can hear you now.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, so it's this thing that like very often like they give this perception of like, oh, it's too difficult. I remember they used to make that meme joke. They made it a lot in the early late '80s and early '90s. I remember one of them like in like comedy movies, like they would like always encounter a black person and they would say, I don't know how to pronounce your, is it Jamal? Jamal? Well, how do you pronounce that? And it was like they're always doing that, where it's like all of these names are so exotic and so impossible to, but literally all the Game of Thrones characters they can do. And I think a lot of times it's not ignorance, it's that they want to demonize it. And a lot of things, I'm telling you, the second white people pick it up, all of a sudden it becomes incredibly attractive or incredibly normalized. When black people wore cornrows, then they said that that was unprofessional. Now, once you had women in UFC, then they started referring to them as boxer braids, and then they started doing it on a regular basis. And then at that point, it's stopped being as demonized anymore. And then you have all these white people appropriating it. Or like dreads. Dreads were considered insanely unprofessional for so many years. Now you got all these white people that want to smoke weed and claim to be Bob Marley. Then all of a sudden now it's normalized, and now it's like, no, it's okay, you can do that, right? Like they will normalize something as long as it's something that they're doing. The war on drugs. If you remember, you had Miss Reagan talking about some just say no and all this nonsense and all whatever. And then now that it's become an opioid crisis, and it's affecting predominantly Caucasians now, all of a sudden it's like, no, this is a health crisis. How is this a moral issue? Why would we put these people in jail for something? They're sick. They can't help themselves. Before we just say no, now they can't help themselves. And now it's like, no, let's legalize all these drugs. Now, I'm all about legalizing the drugs, but I want to point out that we only started really getting into the Overton window, the concept of legalizing these drugs, once white people started doing it. Before then, it was demonized to all hell. Like, and you see it all the time. They will appropriate any parts of our culture, and then at that point, it becomes normalized. When you get white people start naming their daughters Lakeisha, I promise you, it won't be considered a ghetto name anymore, right? To me, I feel like we're ceding ground when they start talking about, like, I get the need for professionalism, and I understand totally the idea of wanting to be grammatically accurate in professional settings. Because I think white people can speak relaxed English just as well as we can. Maybe not as well, but they have relaxed versions of English as well. But I think the idea that like it's unprofessional, the idea that they can't understand us, I think that's just complete fabrication. I think they can always understand. So it's just they don't want to.
So like I said, when I started, like, I think African American Ebonics is understandable, right? Like people can catch it. It happens all the time. I mean, why people sing the songs, right? All the time. They know what's being said, right? So I get that. I specifically was talking about a business environment, and like how would you treat it there? Like and contrasting that to the southern accent, which again, just in a newscaster setting specifically, right? It simply is the most understandable, the easiest, like for anyone to pick up on. So they use like a very standard version of English, very Northeast standard version of English that across the board, no matter where you are in the country, you'll find the same thing. It will not match whatever dialect or accents you'll find locally, which I think is really fascinating. But yeah, I just, I mean, look, like I don't never police other people's uh languages or choices. It's like whatever, right, to me. um but if but I imagine if like you had a child, right, and you're preparing them for the world, and just like Katarana had said previously, right, talking about code switching, it's like, sure, you could talk to this way to me, to your friends, and whatever. But if you're going to be making it outside in the world, then I think you would tell them to be able to speak in a standard version of English for everyone else. I agree with everything you said in terms of like the names, and but I hadn't brought up the names before, but like yeah, I mean I agree with that. Like with the whole Daenerys and Lakeisha thing, that's actually a really amazing comment. But in terms of actually communicating within a professional environment, I would tell my kid, no, we got to play the game here, right? Am I wrong here?
Yeah, me too. I wasn't disagreeing with that part.
Okay.
Like, yeah, because I totally agree. Like I said, in a professional setting, absolutely. I think the ability to code switch is absolutely necessary. And like I said, white people, they know how to code switch as well. Like you'll notice white people, like they always like cut out words, right? Like instead of saying it's cold outside, they'll say it's cold out. Like they like cut things off and speak a relaxed version of English as well. But in a professional setting, then yeah, it just I think for posterity's sake, and I just kind of I guess to kind of keep things formal, right? And that's the thing. I think keeping things formal, there's obviously a place for that. There's a way you talk at the dinner table that you probably wouldn't be talking, and that you know when you're not at the dinner table, you can talk, right? Like that was like an old standard. So I get the need to do that. I get the idea. I just feel like there's very often this pressure put on blacks to assimilate, and a lot of our cultural things are deemed unprofessional, whereas white people it's not. Another perfect example of this is we know what dress attire is. We know what dress attire is, and whenever black people go to church, they're in dress attire. The dress slack, the dress shoes, the dress hats, the dress shirts, and the suits, and so on and so forth. We know what that is. Then all of a sudden you have Caucasians that will wear their jeans with their dress shirts and their ties and so on and so forth. That's very, very common. How often do you see niggas, like when they're going somewhere professional, not wearing dress slacks to go with their dress shirts? We know that. But when white people normalize that, it's like, oh no, this is still dress. It's dress casual. It's acceptable. It's totally fine, right? And they will do that kind of stuff. But if black people were known to be doing that, then they would just outright ban it.
Let's go to Katarana and then Nancy.
Yeah. So I think on an international scale, if with someone that can't really like discern accents very specifically, I think those girls in the video and like Southern AAVE are going to be seen as equally inappropriate. Like, like I don't think there will be very much like discernment on like a German's gonna be like this just sounds stupid as shit to me, just like just like the other one. um but I think definitely like internally there is the whole idea of one is seen worse than the other when it comes to English, native English speakers. And yeah, that's definitely, yeah, it does have a lower status culturally, and it's 100% unfair as to why that is. Because just, yeah, just like everything, like in my country, we were able to go ahead and get our dialect seen as a language, and essentially the dialect is it was created as an offshoot of because of slavery, there's still so many words left over from the country that we were indigenous to that, like, sorry, like, that's not the word we use. We're not going to use like whatever, like, the colonized word for it. We're going to use like what the native, like, African country like word is for it, and it was always seen as just a stupider version of what the colonizer language was, until there was advocacy to go ahead and say, like, no, like, this is a language, we know how to speak yours, we don't want to. um and like there's like the whole idea of like just going ahead and like having it be said by like international governments that this is not a stupider version, this is a different language, and they don't want to conform to yours. And I think that's the same thing that's happening, like, happens with AAVE. A lot of, like, who knows why some of the words, well, we know why, but like, first of all, you go ahead and take people from their home country, there's words already, you go ahead and integrate English, like, over a course of 300 years, is there the ability to pick up like the, let's say exactly the way you can? Yeah, clearly, code switching's fucking easy. We do it all the time. It's more just like that's not ours. And like we shouldn't be seen as like less intelligent as a result of us like essentially like, as I think I brought up before, like, language is culture. By you being able to keep your accent, your dialect, you're keeping your culture. And it shouldn't be stigmatized that you're essentially holding on to aspects of your culture. Like, if we were to go ahead and drop like slang and AAVE altogether, there would be a significant part of Black culture that would be lost. It's not due to a lack of ability. It's like, just like, if she could say howdy towdy baby, then I can say y'all. Thank you.
Azzy?
It's funny because they say y'all too. You know what I'm saying?
But we say
Like,
better.
America is slowly incorporating Ebonics into their daily, even if they don't say it in certain spaces. You guys listen to our music. You guys deal with our vernacular all day. They're even using our vernacular overseas. I have some Indian friends who use some words in India. I'm not gonna say what those words are. Some are positive, some are negative. But the longer they listen to it, the longer they get used to it. Now they know what it means. They know what it is. Like the term ashy. Ashy was just, no one else used the term ashy except, African Americans, because when our skin got very white, it looked like ash, so we said ashy. It just made sense to us. So like to Prime, I don't think we need to use, like, you wouldn't use any slang in a professional setting. So I don't see there's a use in trying to have that there's no use to in that frame of thought, because generally you're just going to use anything to standard. You're just going to use standard language, and any word that is standard within the English language you can use in a professional setting. Now, cultural words, I know white people got some words, Asians, Hispanics, non-black Hispanics, all of them. They all have words that they would normally not use. Now, if we're talking about accents in a professional setting, now accents is the problem. They go after Asians, they go after us, they go after Indians. That's why you don't normally see man, what Indian person who is not like the single only Indian. Like, I know some black people who are able to, wiggle through the cracks even with their own accent, their original accent, and make it to the top. But that's just like they had to go above and beyond. But normally for accents, we're not making it in certain settings, and that's just because of discrimination and that that English what is it, that English Anglican origin. Like they need that in order to make themselves feel comfortable in those, like, if you ever seen any of those videos where somebody, I put on my work voice, oh, hey, how you doing, sir? And they start laughing on the phone when they're having
Sorry
their
to
business
bother
calls
you.
and stuff. Like, yeah, like the business voice. It's like, that's just what we deem like okay. But it's I so I understand what you mean, Prime, but the words themselves, we wouldn't use slang in any of those contexts. Now, even amongst white people. Like, if you ever heard of the game, I was listening to a guy from Europe, right? His name is Bowie the Hero. He's a speed runner. He's British, and there's a game he was speed running, and they actually had specific dialects. You know, certain times in games, people are just saying whatever, they got whatever accent, or it's all they're all French, or they're all European, or all Asian. Well, for certain towns, they had certain dialects. They had the Irish dialect, the Dutch, they had the African, they had the Middle Eastern. Like, they had dialects in this game, and he said that's very interesting because they normally don't do that. There's heavy prejudice against certain like European dialects. There's prejudice against certain African dialects. Like, if you guys remember Final Fantasy X, when Waka had he had the Jamaican accent, you know, and he's like, wow, that's pretty rare. And you know, you would have never known if he was Jamaican or not. So there's instances where you'll see our accents come out, but it's very tokenized. It's very tokenized. And that's why I'm saying there's individuals who make it through the cracks.
What a
I
reference.
think they did
There
that
won't
as
be a
well
lot
for
of
the
them.
newest Watch Dogs too. Like they made like a specification between like African British dialects and like Caribbean English dialects.
Dumb stuff. I was like,
Oh, that's quite a reference. Oh man, that's a hell of a old reference there, Razzie. But nice work there. Oh man, Waka.
nobody played Final
No,
Fantasy X?
I played Final Fantasy X. That's what I'm saying. It's a
Man,
hell of an
y'all
reference.
better know Waka, man.
I remember
Come
him.
on now.
I remember the game, that underwater game. I don't remember the name, but that's Waka played, and like I got perfect at that game. It was amazing. But anyway, so let's go to Madeline.
So yeah, I think accents are tokenized for sure. Like historically speaking, like I think a lot of cultures will reject folks who don't speak the language the way the majority does. It's interesting. Like if you look at like 1930s, 1950s like movies, all the actors and actresses were taught to speak mid-Atlantic English in their classes so that they would sound sophisticated and fancy, and then people would pay to see these movies. And I think that's what it really comes down to, is just like it's a status thing. If you have an accent that's more majority, then you've got greater status, and then thus you're more attractive to prospective employers. And that's like extremely discriminatory. That's why there's this Southern accent reduction class that you can pay like $18 per session, apparently, and get your Southern accent reduced, which is kind of crazy. I posted in VC chat the Google search for it. It's just like, it's ridiculous. Like there's a whole plethora of these classes. So yeah, it's extremely discriminatory. But I do want to point out that there are like occasions where accent and understandability do kind of count. Like if you're an instructor, if you're a teacher, and your job is to instruct a class on anything, the class does have to understand you. And I'm not sure how, like, where do you draw a line between discrimination and just practical need? Because like there is a case to be made here that, like, and I'm not saying it's just Ebonics. I mean, this is an accent, like a universal accent thing. Like if people don't understand you, then you teaching is going to be like, I had for example, when I was in college, I had a instructor who had an accent, but then they also whispered, right? So first I'd have to pick out the words that they were saying, and then I'd have to like interpret to like figure out what they're saying, and I would be like, really behind on the notes. So like,
That's the
where's the
worst.
line? Where's the line? I don't know.
That reminds me. I mean, I don't know, and I'm curious if someone in chat might have the answer to this. But Mad Latin, thinking of air traffic control, right?
Yeah.
Like
Oof.
you have to be understood. Absolutely have to be understood. So I'm curious
Right.
if they allow people of thick accents. I don't know. So maybe if someone else can tell me.
Actually,
speak on
hold
that a
on.
little
I
bit.
know-
Can you?
I did.
Can you on it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Go ahead,
I
Earl.
did train for the Air Force for air traffic control, actually. And initially, actually, I have a Southern accent. And I actually was specifically picked for air traffic control. Because there is a section of the ASVAB test where you do speak. And I think it's not so much about the accent as it is just about enunciation and
Yeah.
making sure that you get your words out clearly, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's just
you
a
have
little
a
add on.
but you have a southern accent, but it's, I mean, for one, it's a slight. And comparing to, again, going back to those women's videos, like I had someone else said something similar, and I had the same thoughts. Like it seemed like those women, it sounded like they had something in their mouths, like they were trying to talk through that, right? And they weren't
Enunciation,
enunciate
yeah.
anything. Yeah, if you're not enunciating, the words were just kind of running together for me. So I guess I think you're really onto something. That makes sense. It's just that enunciation is actually the key to getting, no matter what the accent is, as long as you're hitting every syllable and making sure all the words are clear. That's more important. Uh, and
So
also,
I just asked my brother, by the way. He's an air traffic controller. That's what he does for a living.
okay.
And he was saying that the pilots don't have the same communication requirements as the air traffic controllers do. So maybe you might have pilots with like thicker accents or whatever, but like when it comes to air traffic controllers, like it just has to be like understandable. He said he's never ever encountered a person with an accent where it was like incredibly thick, where it was like hard to understand or anything. I guess they just kind of standardized.
Yeah,
that.
it's too much on the line for someone to have to interpret what you're saying, or if you don't enunciate a word and it runs together with another word, right? You could cause disasters. So
As I understand it, for air traffic control, I know this is just a side point, but in general, like for air travel, English is the standard language. No matter where you are, you have to know English to be able to like fly, and to communicate with air traffic control later on. And so it's fine if the other people have accents. The pilots themselves have accents because they come from all around the world. But like to be able to communicate with the pilots, it makes sense that the people on the ground would have to have a very specific way of talking. And also, I just wanted to like, going back to Ebonics. There was, I remember reading a story that was most definitely written by a white man, 100% written by a white man. He featured an African American teenager, right? Speaking what the white guy thought Ebonics sounded like, right? Like writing that down. Oh man, super racist. I like, I couldn't read what it was say. What was this? Like I didn't know what the fuck. Like he was just like dropping like random syllables and then like squishing words together and thinking, oh no, this is how Ebonics sounds like to me, right? And like it was like the girl was supposed to be like relatively. It was like a troubled teen in high school, you know. I think like and like the white protagonist in the thing was like a teacher, and it was just fucking racist. The whole thing. Like, what was this? I don't know what you think black people sound like, but this ain't it. This ain't it, buddy. So, yeah. Legend, do you have anything to add? I wanted to check with you.
Covered all that we need to say. I'm good on adding to it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Anyone else on this? Marks. Marks. Okay. Hopefully, I don't know what's going on, Marks. But
you know that that story you're saying about the like the bad writing or whatever. Did you ever see Black Lagoon, like the anime? They had an attempt where they had like an American who was like trying to speak English, and the Japanese actress tried to pronounce the American words, and it just did not work. It didn't work. Anyway, sorry. It was just a sidebar, I guess.
Oh no, it's fine. All right, let's move on to one other topic. You want to talk about the solidarity topic? Okay, then let's do.
I think in general, a lot of people want to.
Okay, sure.
Hear about the issue.
Okay, great. Yeah, let's do it. All right. So the next topic. Currently, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is heating up. Israelis are getting ready to evict Palestinians from their homes once again. Many would say that this conflict does not affect the black community, but is that true? Should oppressed people of color have solidarity with others around the world? What does that look like? Again, credit to Katarana for coming up with this. I really appreciate the assistance, Carolina. Um, so yeah, we have individuals, Palestinian individuals, who currently there's big conflicts happening in Israel right now. Are being ejected by the Israeli military from their homes, right, for Israeli settlers to come in, and obviously this is not directly related to the black community, but I'm wondering, like, are these two things related at all? And should there be like a like oh like there's always talk about like a shared struggle, but like how much does that, what does that actually mean? And what do you think that looks like? Fanatic?
Oh, can you guys get me? I just wanted to look up one more fact.
Sure, sure, sure.
One little
Take your
thing.
time. Take your time. Mad Latin.
I think this is a very difficult and complex thing, right? Because like we were just talking about like how other cultures perceive like, you know, Black America already. And like I'm just like wondering like what kind of solidarity there could be if like, you know, all you have is just, you know, like what media portrayal was in the first place. I mean, you do have Palestinians who are being oppressed by the Israeli military, and it's, you know, there's a lot of similarity. Like people call it an apartheid state, right? So like there are like some like parallels. On the other hand, I'm not sure what any kind of community, like I'm not sure what we could do for the Palestinian people in this case, because like I mean, what used to be the buffer was America, right? Like America would say, "No, no, no, Israel, don't you dare seize this land." And I mean, you know, every once in a while they, you know, break a promise and take a little bit of something here, a little bit of something there. But we're so divided right now that it seems like Israel just doesn't care, and they're just going to take everything with both hands and stomp on everyone, right? So I don't see how effective on a practical level any kind of solidarity is, and then B, as far as the moral high ground here, that's a whole nother can of worms too, that we could probably delve into. Um, so yeah, I mean that's where I'm at right now.
Carolina?
You said me, yeah?
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, I guess us as like a group of people don't really hold that much power. But nonetheless, I think that it's kind of intentional within marginalized people that they marginalize us along these certain lines in which we're kind of just like told that's a them issue, that's an us issue, that's not my problem. And you know, at the end of the day, like apartheid is apartheid. Just like we were able to go ahead and, though at least in heart, be in solidarity with South Africa, we should at least be able to do the same with this situation. But though, as I said, like as you know, the group of marginalized people in a land, yeah, our we don't hold very much institutional power, but nonetheless, it's always in our best interest as a species to make sure there's enough species to go ahead and be alive.
Mm.
I'm saying
Okay.
death is bad.
Oh,
That's
okay.
what, yeah.
Okay. Earl.
Uh, so I haven't really been paying attention to the issue overseas in Palestine. I know it's unfortunate that they're being, at least I think it's unfortunate that they're being forced out by the military as it is. But I just, it's a lot of stuff going on in there in the U.S. right now. I haven't really used my time on that. I'll let someone
Legend.
speak.
Legend. Let me unmute you. Sorry. Second. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
I have very little to general knowledge on this. I guess my question would be, what exactly is solidarity? Because to me, what solidarity is I guess you can say an alliance that both parties benefit. You know, I help you, you help me, and it's you get tangible benefits from it. You know what I mean? As far as me being a descendant of freedmen or descendant of American slavery, what exactly could I do to be in solidarity other than, I guess, maybe raise awareness? Is not nothing that I can do individually to, I guess, be in solidarity with them. You know what I'm saying? And honestly, I think that here in America, my tribe, my specific tribe, we have our own issues over here, and they always say, if you gotta love yourself before you love somebody else properly. If you want to help somebody, you gotta help yourself first. Things like that. So, I think it's unfortunate. Whatever they're going through over there is fucked up. Um, I don't like it. I don't agree with it. I think there's some you can draw some parallels to it in comparison to America and the history of Black people here. But I guess my question would be, what exactly is solidarity? As I said, like with the whole Asian solidarity here in America, like what exactly did that mean? Because as far as I was concerned, Black people have always been in solidarity with Asians, but when it's time to reciprocate, that was never reciprocated. So, um, this Black and Brown alliance, Black and Asian solidarity, I don't know what that is exactly. What exactly does that mean specifically?
Okay. Yeah. Interesting perspectives here.
You want me
I
to
think
give a rundown of what's going on, by the way?
well, hold on. Let's finish with Azzy and Miss Fanatic. Azzy, please. You're
Okay, I'm unmuted. All right. So I think we need to be careful. When we say solidarity, yes, we can. The most we can do is be aware and be knowledgeable of their, of their, of the history around this, around what is currently going on, and then if they ask for aid, that we be ready to provide it. But then to just say, our fellow Black people, I was reading the question. It was like, we see their Blackness. Yeah, they're darker skinned. But do they also align with us? Like, I know there's plenty of Black cultures. Or dark skinned cultures are global. We're everywhere, right? But they wouldn't necessarily say, "Hey, we're Black," or the solidarity, like Legend said, would not be reciprocated. Like, I have a book right here, and then when you think of all the examples he also gave, like, we also thought we would have solidarity with. I'm reading a book right now called "Protest and Prejudice: A Study of Belief in the Black Community," and it's about solidarity between the Hebrew Israeli, the Jewish, and the Black community during the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and the ups and downs in that. So oftentimes you'll see that we're, I'm not saying, so let me be careful with this. Oftentimes we'll be ready to jump on and say, "Oh, they're dark skinned, they're Black. We need to support them. We need to we need to say that they're us and we're them," but it's not reciprocated. Especially if they come into our spaces, there becomes a quick divide. Why aren't you doing things like us? The way you speak is wrong. Matter of fact, over in the Middle East, in certain places in Africa, they still use the N word with a hard E. They have house. They still have a form of, I wouldn't even call it slavery. They have people who are of a lower class, and anytime I was listening to two individuals called Abba and Preach. One is Ethiopian, and in certain areas around Ethiopia, there's still heavily a divide between people who are like us and Middle Eastern. So I say, to those who want us, right? Who want us to help them, who want us to raise awareness. And I think on our part, we need to be knowledgeable about what's going on, who's right or who's wrong. Because I'm of the conviction of, like, I don't want to just get in and say they're wrong or they're right. I want to wrap it up. And I don't really know what the real story is. And sometimes we do that. We jump in real quick and say, "Hey, they're hurting us." And we don't really know the real story.
Okay. Yeah, we're gonna have some big disagreements on this one. Interesting. Fanatic.
Yeah. Oh, we're definitely going to have some big disagreements. So I think I do have. I think I'm echoing a few parts of everything. I like the idea
Wait.
of showing
Oh,
solidarity.
wait. Do we want to let Mad Lad give a bit of the context, just because some people were?
Hold on, please. Fanatic, finish your point.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I just want to for context first.
Fanatic didn't get a chance to get
Oh,
his.
I forgot. I'm so stupid.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's all good. So I think that idea about solidarity and all of that, it sounds beautiful on paper, but then again, a lot of times, Black people, the nurturing people that we are, tend to show solidarity and want to support all of these other causes, and then we end up not being able to get some of the same benefits, and there's definitely not a lot of reciprocity. So within like the Arab community, there's like they've maintained the slave trade the longest out of any other group. Like slave trade was perpetuated really heavily in the Arab communities. There's about 350 to 450 Afro-Palestinians. And the thing is that they were never married to the upperclassmen. I forget what their names are. I don't even know how to pronounce it. It's like Bedouin or something like that. I don't know. Whatever. They couldn't marry them. Yeah, Bedouin. There we go. They could only marry the lower class people. That was the only time that ever happened. And a lot of Palestinians still refer to them using the word called slave. Then there's also for me, the idea of me showing solidarity with any group of people who still maintain a super high level of anti-blackness, it's hard for me to get behind on that. The idea is still that the Israeli police still do a lot to harass that community. So that's something that I'm obviously going to have a problem with. But I mean, even in Palestine, the Israelis are like mistreating. Israeli police are mistreating the Afro-Palestinians there. But yeah, I think there needs to be a bigger amount of solidarity thrown our way for us to be able to reciprocate. As far as us making the first move, we've done that far too many times. And yeah, I'm sorry, I won't ramble because it's still open.
All right, so let Madeline like give some sort of summary here, and then I'm definitely going to step in because I disagree with almost everyone here. Go ahead.
So I'm going to try to cover like 50 years of history in like 3 sentences, and then give more details. So like everyone knows, 1948, Israel was founded. What happened? The Israeli or the Jewish population offered a deal. Palestine rejected it. Israel then had the money and the weapons, leftover weapons from World War II, to proceed to force themselves into existence and take more land than what they were initially offering in that deal. 2 decades later, there's the 6 Days War, where Israel took East Jerusalem and the Golan Heights and basically took more land. As a defensive protocol, of course. Like, part of it was they wanted East Jerusalem for, territorial reasons, but also because they wanted to protect themselves because they're being attacked by 6 different countries simultaneously here. Fast forward to today, this is actually directly related to the 6 Days War. A Israeli court has been evicting Palestinians from East Jerusalem neighborhoods because they were settled in East Jerusalem after the founding of Israel, right? So these people are being declared homeless. In 2000-ish, they were allowed to stay on these properties as long as they paid rent. And some of these families refused to pay rent to the Jewish families that theoretically were declared to own the land. So they're currently being evicted, which caused riots, which were caused an Israeli response, which caused Hamas rockets, which is causing now an actual full-on land invasion and aerial bombing campaign from the Israeli government. So that's what's happening right now.
So okay,
yeah, I mean, no, so that's the summary. That's the summary. I just wanted to kind of add a little bit of a take here. I think that solidarity is so like there's the moral and then there's the practical, right? So like morally speaking, I think there is a very strong argument for solidarity. But just judging from everybody's responses, I'm really wondering how solidarity is even possible to begin with. But that's all I've got right now.
Yeah, so I definitely have big disagreements with what I've been hearing from a lot of people here. This is amazing. In fact, I definitely did not expect this. for once, like anti-blackness from the Palestinians, like do we know of massive anti-blackness from like the specifically Palestinians? Like is a thing, but one way or the other, right?
Yes, yes, we do.
One way or the other, one way or the other, right? Like the fact that like, and for instance, like we have within the black community, like you see it all the time. You see like anti whatever the ethnicity is here. Like we've talked about that on this panel before, right? But that doesn't. What does that mean that you aren't supposed to? That those people shouldn't help us with our larger struggle, right? Because some people within our community might have uh, um, poor views of their struggle. Like no, like when we with solidarity all around where oppression stands, like everywhere. These individuals, what's happening in Palestine, like that. First of all, mirrors our struggle. Exactly, it mirrors our struggle. You see the racist establishment there, oftentimes white establishment, there exercising state power against them, like to see how Palestinians are treated, right? Like if you washed out the color, could you tell if it was here in the States? Could you tell, like with like if you describe those police interactions, like that they weren't black, like they face exactly what we face, and so to say like, oh well, maybe, I don't know, like this tepid response to their to things that they're going through, like it's amazing to me that black and brown solidarity, no matter what, everywhere for me, there is never an exception. um
Wait,
I
so you
see.
said that you disagree with almost all of us who
I,
like
oh,
like there
oh
were
my
a
god.
couple of people, but
Yeah.
like not all of
Oh my
us
god,
have a
Katana,
problem with it.
let me say my points. Thank you. Um, so yeah, it's like what does solidarity look like? Well, solidarity looks like for instance, the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, where you say like you're not going to support the racist Israeli government, right? And um, that movement, right? Even the idea of boycott, divestment, and sanctions. Well, that's what we did to South Africa. Like this, when we talk about the Israeli apartheid state, it's because we get that word from what happened in South Africa, right? Mandela said like we aren't free until the Palestinians are free, because he saw it, and like this, so I'm just shocked that anyone could say that like, oh well, like should we be should we be helping these people out, like or to be concerned about their struggles, like well we have a lot of stuff happening here, well yeah, we have a lot of stuff happening everywhere in the world, right? Like I would want, like we've just gone through the George Floyd protests. Those are worldwide. There are people who had never been to the States, right? Never talked to an African American, but marching for the injustice that they saw was an international movement, right? Like international, like just doing that. That was solidarity. Like now you can make judgments about like each individual person, how deep that solidarity go. That's a different conversation. As it's a fair conversation, but to not, I don't know. Like I'm just highly surprised. Azzy?
Yeah, so Prime, I do agree with you that I agree with you that what they're going through, we went through, right? I think most of us here acknowledge that. We can draw parallels between what they're going through and what we went through, right? I just and I'm all for, like, I'm for my black and brown Asians, my black and brown Indians, my black and brown, like anybody who uh, fight the good fight. We are rooting for you around the world. Like I said, there's a lot of us around the world globally, but we need, this is now it's borderline war between Palestine and Israel, right? So we need to be careful when we just align ourselves when we don't really know all the facts, all the history. And that's what I'm saying. So
Do
right
you
now
need
I'm
to
taking the
know?
time.
Do you need to
I'm
know
taking the
all the
time
history?
to
Do you need to know all the history of, like, for instance, in Canada, right? In
Mhm.
Canada, like how they're treating the Native American population there, right? Where they're taking their land, where they're poisoning their land with the oil, the tar sands that comes to the United States, right? Where they're shooting those individuals, when there's raping those individuals. I think I could go down here, and I'm guessing most of you don't know, like, the intricacies. I'm guessing most of the people can't name the tribes, right, of the different Native American tribes that are involved in those different struggles. But can we draw conclusions? Can we say, hey, that's wrong? And can we
Yeah,
say that we
well,
stand in
yeah, we can say
solidarity
that.
That wasn't
That's
what
with those
that wasn't
that's not.
Native,
Well,
those
but we're talking about
indigenous
solidarity.
individuals?
right.
We're
Yeah,
not
That's a
talking
different
about whether
question.
something's right or wrong. I think it's wrong when Palestinians shoot rockets. I think it's wrong when Israeli people use airstrikes and kill Palestinians. I was watching a video where once they after those airstrikes, it looked like 9/11 or like the Twin Towers. They hit like a apartment building, and then one side and the other side started falling. Like it looked like it happened to us. And then when the medical professionals came and the paramedics came to try to take care of the people who are injured, the Israeli police wouldn't even let them into the vicinity. So, like, you look at that and we get upset and we get emotional, right? And I'm saying, yes, I am upset when I see stuff like that. I don't want stuff like that to happen. And my form of solidarity. So then this is why I think someone said, what do you mean by solidarity? What do you want us to do?
I literally state that when I talked. I said exactly
Say
that.
it again. Because
I talked about the boycott, divestment, and sanctions program. Like, I where you don't
okay.
invest in. Do you know what BDS is? You've ever heard of that? If not, okay, then I guess I can.
So yeah, don't invest. So where our money, our fiscal resources, right? Yeah. Okay, I
yeah,
understand that.
yes.
We
There's a
could.
bunch of companies on the BDS list. So if you have the choice, as most of the time you do, like, just don't buy things from particular companies that are actively supplying the state with what
Well,
they
yeah,
need.
sure, we can do that. But is that going to? Yeah. Okay, we can do that. That will make some. That will help. I agree with you there.
That literally helped
Yeah.
dismantle the South African apartheid state. Like, that's how we did that. It's from exactly this program. And it's from divesting from there and putting so much economic pressure, right? One of the many things, I guess, they put so much economic pressure on them that the regime collapsed. And it's fascinating. I mean, if you're talking about, like, gaining more knowledge, you should gain more knowledge on.
Then you're
You
talking
should
about
gain
putting
more knowledge on all struggles. That makes sense. Like, to gain more knowledge on 100%. I
but
agree. I'm not gonna say not to
this is
gain more
literally
knowledge on it.
this is literally a whole government. You know, that's what I'm saying. This is a war of nations. Like, yeah,
So
we
I don't understand. But again, this is a strategy that you're saying, like, what can I do as an individual? You could do this. You could literally decide where to spend your money, right? And it's a tactic that has worked before. We've seen it in South Africa, where we get the word apartheid that is applied to the Israeli government.
okay.
And, like, you're asking what does solidarity look like? What does that actually practically mean? Like, I've told you exactly what that looks like. I don't know what the argument is here.
I think, Prime, the
Can I-
argument is that you because listen, there's two different things between saying whether something is morally wrong and whether or not we are going to take active steps to fight against it, right? And again, I think it actually makes all the sense in the world when considering alliances or considering to whether or not to inconvenience yourself with someone else's harm, is to consider whether or not those people have had that same attitude towards you. Historically, you want to bring up the Native Americans. I think there's all of the reason in the world to show solidarity in every way, shape, and form, especially for Black people with Native Americans, because Native Americans have shown, like, insane insane amounts of solidarity with us. When Black people were first freedmen, the reason why Black people you always hear Black people talking about how much Native American blood they have, because in very large amounts, when Black people were fleeing the South or leaving the South, a lot of them settled in places like Oklahoma and where there were large amounts of Native Americans, and then there was a lot of intermingling. Black men were marrying Native American women and vice versa because of the fact that the Native Americans had been so historically disenfranchised, and Native Americans were extremely welcoming to African Americans into their establishments. And so the idea is they've always shown that sort of solidarity. We've always recognized in a lot of ways they were largely more oppressed than we were. Obviously, so with all of that being said, I think the idea of showing solidarity with them, it sounds easy as hell. It's just there's a lot of times where you can let someone stand on your back to get up, and then they don't put their hand down in order to help pull you up once they're up there. And I think that's a problem that happens with a lot of communities. Like white people did it by using us as slaves. I've seen so many different Hispanic and Latin cultures come over here and then say things like, "Yeah, we're being successful and we didn't do it whining all the time." And it's like, yeah, you did it on the backs of all of the civil rights movement and things that African Americans have fought for in this country. There is not a person of color in this country that hasn't reaped the benefits of the civil rights movement of the Black people. Yet you do not see unequivocal solidarity when it comes to Black. You still see the same amount of anti-Blackness from most of these people of color when it comes to our struggle, which is ongoing, which hasn't been addressed. And we see how often these people are willing to use our alliances in order to get what they want. When it came to the women's suffrage, one of the lead women for women's suffrage specifically said, "Oh, I don't care about Black men getting. I don't care about Black men. I don't care about Black men getting the right to vote. I only care about women." And even though a very large portion of her women's suffrage movement was African American women, and it couldn't have been achieved without them. So the idea for me to sit here and consider and make sure that there isn't a high degree of anti-Blackness and that there's not some form of harm being done to African Americans within their establishments before I decide whether or not I'm going to toss them my hand of friendship or my hand of support or my dollars, I think that makes all the sense in the world, and I don't know why that would ever be unreasonable.
Oh man,
and I just want to
hold on. So much disagreement here. So much disagreement here, and I'll go to Kataran next. But like so much disagreement, unbelievable. One, the Native American point actually proves my side of the story, right? Because Native Americans, they had some of their tribes would enslave African Americans, African slaves. They would actually just re-enslave them, that the ones that escaped, or just had their own slaves, right? But that doesn't damn the entire indigenous community. Certainly not. And does that make me hesitate for 1 second? 1 second to help with their struggle? Not even a little bit. Not even a little bit. Today, we see a lot of anti-Asian sentiment among the Black community. Like, again, Fanatic, we can hear you typing. We hear a lot of anti-Asian sentiment among the Black community, right? Should we expect Asians to not assist us in our struggle? We see a lot of anti-Asian Black sentiment within the Asian community. Should I not assist them with their struggle? Should I not have solidarity when they're facing vicious violence out in the streets with them? Absolutely, I will have solidarity. Like, yeah, so what, there's some anti-Black sentiment with it. Yeah, there's anti-Blackness everywhere. Fucking everywhere. Everywhere around the world. You can't go around, there's nowhere around a place around the world you can't find anti-Black sentiment, right? So I guess what's the point of solidarity with any other? Like, if they're not your tribe, then I guess you don't bother. Like, what? No, that has nothing to do with anything. It has nothing to do with anything. And how do we build these bridges if we don't extend a hand, right? Yeah, there are going to be betrayals. These things aren't like a direct line to like freedom and independence, right? You don't simply start a movement together, right? You don't start working together and expect there to be no problems, no bumps on the road. And understanding, of course, that we aren't all a monolith, right? The Asian community is certainly not a monolith. The Black community is not a monolith. So you have individuals in those communities who will do terrible things, right? But that shouldn't demolish the fact that we are facing similar struggles. And certainly, again, with our Palestinian brothers and sisters, they're facing a very extremely similar struggle to one we face and the ones that our South African brothers and sisters faced. And to think to this isn't any hesitancy to stand with them 100%, amazing. Karana.
Yeah, I don't think solidarity should ever be conditional. This isn't tit for tat. It's not like what you can do for me, and then I'll just kind of check out the situation and do from there. And like if there is any form of contention in which like these groups aren't supporting us, you have to recognize that it's all just like a system. Everyone's pitted against each other. So like how else? And I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying like everyone's hands can be wiped clean of it, but like we have all as minorities been essentially gone ahead and like what do you call it, factioned, so that we could all pit against each other, because at the point in which we all are actually able to work together, then we would actually like accomplish things. So like this needs to be the first steps in moving forward to accomplish things. And even like if there is like something bad in the past, like there, at the end of the day, like like going ahead and doing things for these communities is doing things for us. Liberating one community is liberating all of us. So I just don't really see the whole idea in which we have to go ahead and like just kind of it's kind of like a bad relationship you have with somebody where you sit there and like keep tabs, and like only once you go ahead and hit a certain line, then now like your struggles are my struggles. And also there's like a bit of a point of like this whole like you need to put the mask, you need to go ahead and like help your community first before you help others. But like yeah, like there's a bunch of communities that like everybody's having issues all the time. If we sit there and wait until our like issues are completely solved before we go ahead and help others, then we're going to be sitting here and never helping anyone ever. I see all of it as just
That's not true.
So we'll go to Azzy, and then Legend seems to have something to say, and then we'll go to Fanatic. All right. And then
Yeah, like there's a difference between support and solidarity. Solidarity literally means your problems are mine, my problems are yours. We are in unity. We are fighting a common battle. We're fighting the same battle. I'm saying what's happening in Palestine and Israel, it's a literal war between this is a war between nations. Now you can choose whether to support one nation or the other, but you need to understand. Like when we talk about I'm part Native American. Like my grandmother was a native. She was indigenous. I don't know the name of my tribe because she never talked about it, but I knew she was indigenous. We knew she was indigenous, so I have some sort of alignment with the culture, and I can say that even more. When you look at the problems they have, it boils down to culture, boils down to religion. This is like a whole this is an ethno battle going on right now. So that's what I'm saying. You need to understand. Like I understand if my brothers in Islam, or they understand what's going on. We need to understand the intricacies of what's going on and whether or not we're fighting the same battle. Okay. And then if we are, then yes, go for it. But I'm not saying we can't support them. You can support anybody you feel aligned to. You can support anyone. So go ahead and support them. I support them by, like you said, you had those lists of companies that you said don't finance. I can support them by not financing those companies. There's a difference between support and solidarity. So I want everybody just going on to say like, yeah, we understand your struggle when you really don't. There's a lot of people who say that and they don't understand the struggle. And then we have that repeat of the civil rights where everybody feels like you're aligned and you're really not.
Okay. Let's go to Legend. 1 second. I'm gonna unmute you. Legend, please go ahead.
This is intense. Let me start out by saying there is no Black and Asian solidarity. There is no Black and brown solidarity. I represent the tribe of. Huh?
No,
we support each other.
I represent the tribe. I represent the tribe here in America, known as the descendants of freedmen. All that foundational Black Americans, Native Black Americans, American descendants of slavery. That tribe's history is specific and exclusive to only me. That is the greatest crime in history. human history. So what I'm saying is I'm in New York City. Propaganda between, Asians, black people attacking Asians. I think somebody even mentioned, oh, the anti-blackness within. If it was so much anti-blackness towards Asians and all these other groups, how come we're so inviting to everybody in our culture? How come we support the Asian community? They open up their businesses in our neighborhoods. We support them, yet they beat the hell out of our women. They exclude our people out of the businesses and things of that nature that we're trying to open up. We're trying to get in the hair product businesses and things of that nature. The Palestinians, like, that is messed up. But what I'm talking about is, before I can get justice before anyone else, I have to help my tribe first. Everybody else does it, but every time when it comes to black people, we gotta go above and beyond and put everybody else's issues above our own and to help them. And then when they get their agenda met and they get their issues solved, we're left in the wind. We've seen. Show me the Asians, show me the Latinos who was picking cotton here in America. Can you
They
show me that?
exist. There's not a lot.
You showed me that.
This is really a conflation. Are we hoping that we have more people enslaved? This is history.
Oh no,
No, I'm saying like, of course no one else.
Please.
No, like
history, you would see the pictures.
No, of course.
Wait.
No. I'm not saying that's what he's saying. But I'm saying, like, of course, like, yeah, there was nobody else picking cotton because we were the only ones that they were able. We were the only ones that they got. But it's not like we can't be in solidarity with them just because they don't have the same exact history as us.
Okay, so you're
What about
saying
the transcontinental railroad?
solidarity is a mutual beneficial relationship, an alliance. What if I'm in solidarity with them? What are they doing to reciprocate for us? That's what solidarity to me is. I see the AAPI advocating for the Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. I don't see them talking about reparations for the descendants of freemen here. That would be solidarity. That is a perfect example of solidarity. Do the Jews fight for all the other groups when they talk about the Holocaust? That history was specific and exclusive to them, and they advocate for all other Jews. It's simple. That's my stance. We can agree to disagree. I hear what you're saying, Prom.
Yeah.
We got the same name. I respect you. I like you. I just don't agree that even with the civil rights movement was supposed to be for black people. You can even read the book when affirmative action was white, majorly benefiting white women. Majorly benefit. Where was the Asians who was getting castrated and their body parts was being sold to other white people?
Okay. We'll get into it, but I gotta let people go first. So we got Miss Fanatic, then Madeline.
Yeah, so there was a few things. Katarana, you said that solidarity shouldn't be conditional. I'm gonna just read to you the definition of solidarity. Unity or agreement, a feeling or action, especially among individuals with a common interest, mutual support within a group, mutual. So solidarity is necessarily the denotation of the word, and I would say the connotation as well, both imply that there has to be a mutual understanding, a mutual agreement, a mutual interest. And I would say that in order for someone to be considered my friend, then they have to be able to display that my well-being is of equal concern to them. Otherwise, it's not a real friendship. There's a level of dominance that isn't actually suitable for a friendship. At that point, I am just your supporter while you continue to take that support, and it's a parasocial relationship. I would say when I'm talking about alliance or when I'm talking about having the interest of another person, I would need to know that that person has my interest in mind. Because if that person doesn't have the interest in mind, or if that person means my harm, then at that point now I'm letting a wolf into the hen house. And I would say that when it comes to these things, I think to woefully considering the degree of anti-blackness that is so present in almost every culture, the idea that I would consider, and I would be cautious, and I would distrust, and I would evaluate before offering my inconvenience, my alliance, and putting that as part of my platform and using my voice for someone else's interest. For someone to come around, I would not do that. For someone to come around and then misuse that. We've had this situation happen to us so consistently. African Americans overwhelmingly supported the Republican Party before the Republican Party was willing to throw all of that out of the window when it came to ensuring that they got themselves that Republican president during the time when we had a split vote. And the way that the Republicans responded was, yes, we'll give you that president, and yes, as long as you give us our president. Then the South's demand was, then you remove all federal troops from the South. And the second they did so, blacks endured some of the most insane and harsh hardships that we've ever known in this country since slavery had been abolished. And as a result of that, the blacks overwhelmingly became Democratic. That's when the parties ended up switching because of that action. So the idea that we can just throw everyone in our alliance and ignore the possibility that these people don't want our interests is absolutely ridiculous. We threw our alliance to Bill Clinton, and he did some of the most damaging things to African Americans that have been done in legislation over the last 50 years. So the idea that I can just toss all that out the window, ignore it all, and just say, nope, if people are oppressed, I support them, sounds absolutely absurd. It sounds unintelligent. It sounds like we're going to be completely naive and ignorant, and I don't expect black people to ever do that. I know what solidarity means. I know that morally, I'm going to stand against all people's oppression, no matter what. But if the person who is being oppressed does not have my interest at heart, I'm not going out of my way or inconveniencing my way to stand for them, considering I only have a limited means of resources. I am not an infinite human being with an infinite amount of power. We already see how many barriers there are literally standing in the way of any form of legislation or any form of support for us in this country. We have been fighting some of the same exact battles, such as police brutality in this country, for well over 200 years. It's absolutely insane to me that we will always stand up for literally everyone else, but when we're in the middle of a civil rights struggle, like in the long hot summer of 2020, plenty of people will still display their anti-blackness. Now, I will gladly admit that we had so much worldwide support with when it came to the George Floyd's killing. And I think that was a beautiful thing. And we now see the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act as a result of that. So I know that things are changing. But I don't know every individual group. And I think it's absolutely sane and absolutely sensible to have a barometer when I'm considering whether or not I should put my alliance behind someone. It makes all the sense. And it's literally embedded in the word solidarity.
So I'm going to let Carolina respond, and then we'll go to Matt Latin. I haven't forgotten you out, but she called her out. So I'll let her respond. And then we're going to have a big fight.
And one more thing she said. She said we can't wait until our problems are solved to wait on in order to throw our support on others. And I don't think and I totally agree with that. But I think it's a mischaracterization of what we were saying. No one said we need to wait until our problems are solved. We're still in the middle of these battles. I think the idea is that while we're fighting these battles, we do have a limited of resources and a limited of voice and a limited of power. And I would say that people who are willing to stand with us as we are fighting for our things, we can equally support each other. And that's how you end up building coalitions. But the idea of me throwing my interest into another person who doesn't care for mine sounds absolutely ridiculous.
Amazing. All right. So, Carolina, I want you to respond to Matt Latin, and then I'm going to step in. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's kind of like always thinking the other person's gonna do the thing, and like somehow we're gonna live in this world in which like two wrongs will eventually make a right. Like if I don't stand for you and I don't, and you don't stand for me, then somehow that's gonna be really productive and things are gonna totally move forward. Like yes, there are anti-black sentiments around the world. Why do they exist? Because they've been manufactured to exist. People have literally gone ahead and manufactured consent in which the consent is black people don't know are like these really like boisterous people that you don't want to be working with. How can we go ahead and like change anti-black sentiment? Then we need to go ahead and stand together with other people that are fighting for things that are at the same time going to help us. Now I'm saying if we go ahead and there's a whole issue over there, and if we go ahead and help them, it's actually conducive objectively counterproductive to our struggles. Like there's an ethnic minority over there, but essentially what they want is to go ahead and do a reverse apartheid state. Obviously we're not going to go ahead and support them, but like this is not helpful for anybody. Going ahead and like breaking it down on racial lines, and racial lines are arbitrary as fuck, like it's just kind of weird to sit there like on this line and saying, well, you're not technically melanated the way that you're supposed to be for this to be my struggle. So, like, no, I'm not saying like it's really strange. I just don't get it. Like as I like it's basically like it's been proven and like said over and over by like different black leaders that this is exactly the same to what was happening in South Africa. We were able to say, "Hey, that's not good. So we need to go ahead and fix it." But for some reason, just because it's, they're black, and we haven't seen that Palestinians have ever stand in like solidarity with BLM. So I guess that's a you problem. But like, there's really not that many people to be in solidarity with them. So like, what is it? Just like, I guess I hope your people are doing a really good job of advocating for you because we have our own struggles and like, like until we fix ours, like, I and then like there are people on the panel that say we have our own problems. It's like, like I understand that like you as an individual only have so much time, but us as a collective, we have infinite amount of time. We can go just because we're advocating for one struggle doesn't mean that we can't advocate for another. Like, yes, if you really individually care a lot about BLM and you want to go ahead and put your money behind BLM, good. And I'm not telling you that you personally, as a person, need to go ahead and now find a way to make 2 times more income so that you can give like exactly the same amount of time and money to both of those things. But collectively, Black organizations can still go ahead and say, we would like to go ahead and say that we're in solidarity with these groups. And I, as, the NAACP, I, as, NESPE, the National Society of Black Engineers, I, as the National Society of Black Educators, am going to be performing. I will be participating in BDS, and that is my solidarity. And I hope everybody else that has the means can go ahead and like give up some of your time. That's not necessarily telling everybody that you need to divest your interest in what you have right now. Nobody's asking you to go ahead and find more time. It's still something that us as a group need to care about.
So, Madeline?
So, I mean, this quote, "Wolf in the hen's house." What are the Palestinians gonna do if we offer them our full support? Exactly. Like, you're expecting like some sort of crazy betrayal or something? Like, I don't understand why that's even a consideration. And this isn't a battle of nations. This is one nation has completely obliterated the other. There's a winner in this struggle, and that winner is now engaging in genocidal behavior against the losers. They are actively driving these individuals out of the nation.
Right.
So, in terms of, hold on.
You're just not saying.
Sorry, let him finish. Let him finish.
So, in terms of whether it's okay to ignore this, I mean, like, honestly, Americans have a tendency to ignore all the genocidal things that happen all over the world. So, like, this isn't a big surprise one way or the other, right? But, like, this is actually a huge deal in terms of morals and ethics because you are looking at a population that's actively being suppressed and forced out of this country and saying, nah, I don't have time for that. I don't care. I've got my one single issue. And I get it, like activists, like Prime Legend's an activist for one specific issue, so he's going to be really into this one specific issue, and he's not going to give a shit about anything else. However, this is such a crazy thing to ignore because these are people who are suffering. They're being bombed and invaded for standing up to being evicted, right? Like, this is a lot. And like, I'm not saying that Israel is always the bad guy here. Like, they had to fight to survive to become a state in the first place. I understand that they had their own specific struggle, but they're using their specific struggle as an excuse to put other people into struggle, right?
Okay.
And I think it's our responsibility to help and fight the underdogs in any type of conflict because that is the best way of reducing evil. So yeah, we should all stand in solidarity with anybody who is being suppressed like this. Like, this is crazy.
I get it. So you're just going to repeat, and literally at the very beginning of the conversation, you're saying the initial point. I thought I moved the conversation forward. I said quite a bit. You didn't literally address a single thing I said. Neither did Colorado for the most part. So at this point, I'm just going to say everything that I already said again still stands. And until you address that, I have nothing else to contribute because I definitely made my point.
Okay.
You didn't address it.
So you want me to address them? All right. So let's do it. All right. Let's get into this. All right. So, so much to say, right? Azzy, right? This isn't like a war. Like what's being fought right now isn't a war. This is one state with all the power crushing another people, right? This one powerful state engaging in a racist ethnic cleansing campaign against our Palestinian brothers and sisters. That's what's happening there. That's what's happening right now. People being tossed out of their homes, right, and brutalized by the police. Like, we've seen this. We've seen this here. Tossed out of their homes and brutalized by the police. The Palestinians are literally second-class citizens. Literally second-class citizens within the Israeli state. Like, they have like Palestinian-only roads, right? You can't literally, in some places you literally can't even drive on the same roads. They're putting ghettos. They have literal ghettos. Like, that's what it is. Ghettos where you can. This is where you live. You can't. And your movement is restricted. Like, this is our struggle. I don't see the difference between our struggles. If you do, it's amazing. But this is our struggle.
No, you missed the point.
Dude, no, thanks. Okay. And alleging this whole thing about like worrying about your specific tribe, this is complete nonsense to me. Complete nonsense. Like, I don't understand this. Like, all our oppressed people, we are all in the same tribe, as far as I'm concerned.
No,
like,
we're not.
We are all fighting this. That's fine. We're all fighting the same struggle for liberation, for freedom.
We're not
talking about. Well, okay, all right. Well, I'm talking now. Thank you. So, we are talking about like parallels once again. Well, let's talk about parallels. Let's talk about once again South Africa and talk about Ireland. These two nations, right, have a close relationship, right? A very close relationship that's been built together over years because they were fighting a similar struggle. The Irish against the English, and the South African, well, white South Africans against the African South Africans. All right, but like Mandela and others, right? Other leaders going over to Ireland, right, and saying that your struggle is our struggle, and them responding. Sending aid back and forth, right? Ireland sending aid to South Africa, right? Signing contracts, doing trade deals, right? And speaking out when they had the chance, when they went to, when they got to see, I believe in the European Union or a European Council or something like that. They're understanding their struggle is our struggle. And someone has to like extend a hand first. Like, I don't know, like not seeing like, and then I'm sorry, there's just so many things here that, and I'm all over the place. But like what was it? Fanatic saying, well, what have the Palestinians done for me? What, seriously? That's how we do it? What have the Palestinians done for me? First of all, I would say that African Americans have more power than Palestinians in this particular situation, right? And so we should be. Don't worry, hold on. I can mute people if they need assistance. I can just do that, and then we're good. All right. Fuck. The fuck was I talking about again? The shit. What was I saying? Was the last thing I said?
Extending a hand and being the first.
The last thing you said was Palestinians have less power than Black people.
Yes. Less power than African Americans and so many people around the world. So it's our turn to help them, so that they can stand on their feet. I don't understand why this is even controversial among the Black community. Apparently, this is controversial among this panel, that you wouldn't extend a hand to our brothers and sisters who are facing a struggle that looks like ours. Like, Fanatic.
Again, I think solidarity is obviously going to be conditional. I don't know what it is that you're here. Yeah, I feel like again you're not really necessarily addressing my point, and you're just like restating again. Like, let me just go ahead and make sure so that we don't have to go down this road again, right? Which sounds to me like what the main point of what you're saying is what they're going through is really bad, and what they're going through is something similar to what I'm going through. Just so that we're crystal clear here, I'm not in disagreement. They're going through something which is the oppression by others, and it's absolutely horrible, and it is extremely similar to what we're going through. My main point has been this entire time, and I don't think, again, it's not being addressed necessarily, but it's okay. I said a whole bunch, and I get it. Maybe you guys just didn't take notes, or maybe you guys don't follow it. It's really, really simple. My alliance will always be conditional. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, but an enemy is not my friend, and those things can never be. And so, again, I'm not saying that I'm absolutely opposed to showing any sort of solidarity to the Palestinians. I'm not familiar enough with them or familiar enough with their situation to know whether or not I should be throwing it. But what I am saying is that we should have a keen eye. We should weigh the freaking scales and see whether or not they're worthy of our alliance, because we have been going through our problem for quite some time. We saw a worldwide revolution when it came to George Floyd's death. I should probably investigate to see, did Palestinians show any solidarity in that case, or do they maintain their anti-blackness that they have had, where they have black people relegated to a specific ghetto? They don't allow blacks to marry the upper class women, and so on and so forth. If that thing is still happening there, yeah, it's going to be really hard for me to be able to say, woe is Palestinians. Just the same way I would say, it would be really hard for me to say, woe are, it was hard for me to feel bad for the South Africans who were being upended by Africans, by Black Africans who felt like their land was unfair and they were slaughtering and taking and confiscating their land from them, and reappropriating it. I think, yeah, it was hard for me to show concern, considering that this was a retribution to something that had happened to them for how many years, and there has not been any form of like restoration of these people on their land, and there's still the ongoing oppression and the ongoing poverty caused by the condition by these very farm owners. So it's hard for me to immediately just get behind something without knowing what's actually happening and deciding what I want to do. Native Americans were very trusting people, and they trusted those white men that were going through their land as they got infected with smallpox blankets, and some tribes were wholly eliminated because they gave their hand indiscriminately and decided to support and trade with these people who meant their harm. I think that it's absolutely reasonable to always consider that and always be watchful, considering how many times Black people have been abused, mistrusted, misused, and so on and so forth.
Legend went to speak, so I want to make sure he had a chance. 1 second. Go ahead, Legend.
Glad. Yes, I'm an activist. Black people are dealing with more than just one issue. And again, Fanatic, he explained the definition of what solidarity is. You know, there is no alliance between Black and brown people. There is no alliance between Black and Asians and coalitions and solidarity. It's never a problem whenever Asians advocate for other Asians. It's never a problem whenever Jews advocate for Jews. But every time Black people want to talk about uplifting and advocating for Black people first, it's always a problem. And we have seen throughout history where Black people who have taken up other people's causes and we've been left behind. We've seen this in recent history and throughout the entire history. Look at the civil rights movement. Asians are included as minorities. Latinos are included as minorities. All immigrants are included as minorities. Disabled people, white women are considered as minorities and they get minority benefits. All of those people are considered minorities and people of color, and they got legislation that was supposed to be specifically and exclusively for Black people who built this country's wealth. It was supposed to be for them, but somehow, some way, everybody got included. So what I'm saying is, before I can help anybody else, I'm gonna help my people first. Period.
So
that's simple.
So okay. And I see your hand, Karama. Mr. Fanatic, right? The BLM movement has inspired many, and it was inevitable that comparisons be made between the discrimination and brutality against Blacks in the West and the treatment of Palestinians by Israeli occupation forces. Palestinians joined the U.S. and European protests and raised Palestinians' flags bearing the slogan, Palestinian Lives Matter. A mural of Floyd was painted on the separation wall near Bethlehem. The BLM movement has become an indictment of all forms of racism, injustice, and discrimination around the world. But with Palestine, there's a special kinship. On May 30th, Eid al-Hawak, a 30-year-old autistic Palestinian, was gunned down in cold blood by Israeli soldiers as he walked to a school in Old City of Jerusalem. The killing was widely condemned. Last week, the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights called on Israel to swiftly develop a full, independent, impartial, competent, transparent investigation into Israeli forces killing a Palestinian man with a mental disability in Jerusalem. Added that those responsible must be held to account. This sounds extremely familiar to me. All that sounds extremely familiar to me. Yes, there was movements within Palestine, right? Solidarity movements in Palestine for a BLM, for the Black Lives Matter protests. Yes, like they are aware of our struggle. People over there. Yes, and there are going to be racist or anti-Black Palestinian individuals. Absolutely. Once again, they exist everywhere. Doesn't make a fucking difference. To Legend, right? Talking about like there is no Black and brown solidarity. Don't understand this at all. Never will. They're not that. Like we had once again people marching within this movement, this BLM movement, this fight that we've been having. It wasn't just Black people in the streets. It wasn't just Black people. There were white individuals, there were Asian individuals, there were Hispanic individuals, there were Native American individuals. They were all there fighting for us. Right? And then to say that there's no solidarity between us, it's nonsense. It's crap. It's shit. Fuck that. Never. Yes, there is a shared struggle. There's a shared struggle. Even our white brothers and sisters can come and stand with us on these fights. Yes, there is a shared struggle. It's amazing that some people here can't see that. This fight, right? We have allies. Literally, the civil rights movement would not have actually succeeded, right? Simply on the backs of African Americans. Because guess what? We didn't have the institutional power to do that. We relied on others, meaning our white brothers and sisters, right, to help us out and to actually carry those the fights in the streets into the legislator, and actually gets laws passed. That's how that happened. It wasn't it wasn't a Black president who signed in civil rights legislation. That's not how that worked. So to say that there's no solidarity between people, right, that just doesn't exist, I don't understand. This is a completely alien concept to me. For a person who's been involved in leftist struggles, this is a completely alien concept to me. When we see a state crushing individuals, I was just reading an article talking about like a video of an Israeli policeman kneeling on the neck of a Palestinian kid. The same, you could compare photos and it's the same fucking thing. But there's no solidarity. We don't stand with them. And we have to wait, apparently, according to you, not according to Fanatic. You guys are saying different things here. But that we have to wait until we are free? When the fuck will that happen? So basically, yes, we leave everyone else up to their own fights, right? And then we can expect no assistance in return. I don't get it. We'll go to Catarana, we'll go to Azzy, and then back to Fanatic and Legend. I want to make sure you guys can respond to anything that I say.
Yeah, I just want to say something, Prime.
Okay.
I'm about to head off and get some dinner with the fam, so I just wanted to say I appreciate everybody and everybody's thoughts. I enjoyed my time here, and I hope you guys have a good night. I appreciate you having me on, Prime. Nice meeting everybody.
Okay. So, Catarana, go ahead.
Yeah, as someone that also works within advocacy, but I do like STEM advocacy, my work is on representation in STEM. I am a Black woman, but my organization isn't just centered around getting more Black people into the middle class. It's getting all types of minorities into the middle class. There's no way that I would go ahead and be able to form any form of institutional power. I would not have any actual voice if I said, I only want to help Black people get into STEM. Anybody else, that's not my fucking problem. Everybody's struggles are my struggles. There need to be more queer people inside of STEM, so I advocate for more queer people in STEM. All of us are able to go ahead and work together and overall go ahead and present a holistic front in which we say there's many issues that are going on, but at the end of the day, we have a common goal, and the common goal is greatness. And just because we don't necessarily have the same exact racial makeup as somebody doesn't mean that we can't have solidarity. As you know, a lot of people that are Black, I'm not talking about you, Fanatic. I know I'm talking mostly about Prime Legend. Okay, so like, yes, okay, even if traditionally, Black people were the ones that went ahead and advocated for civil rights, just because other people are reaping the benefits of us advocating, that's not a problem. Do you want everybody to go ahead and advocate? What? Are you mad that That's ridiculous that there's a problem with other people reaping the benefits of the Civil Rights Act. If the whole idea is to go ahead and establish first-class citizenship for Black people, then it needs to apply for everybody. There's no reason why Black people need to have more, like white people should have had more rights than us. And then once one of us gets more rights, all of us need the same amount of rights. If anybody is disenfranchised, we are all disenfranchised, and holistically, we need to go ahead and work on it together. There's no way that we would have been able to reach anything if we didn't have allies. And that doesn't mean now that we have more power than Palestinians, we need to be allies to them. We have more institutional power of Black Americans to go ahead and do anything right now. Unless we're competing with Uyghurs, Palestinians are some of the most disenfranchised people in the entire world. So yes, this might be one of the rare times where Black people are able to say that we have more power than them, but we do. And since we do, we need to go ahead and stand up. And just because we can't go ahead and say, when have Palestinians sometimes been able to do the same? They haven't had the power at times to even do the same. Just like if this whole issue was happening right now in June of last year, I would not say it's wrong on anybody to say, hey, we don't have time to go ahead and focus on both. But right now, like, we have the time. BLM's always a thing, but at the moment, there's a moment of calm. We need to go ahead and like make sure that we're extending solidarity there so we can get solidarity back. And like, it's just so crazy to me to think that like we need to go ahead and separate by these arbitrary little fucking boxes. Like, maybe in your case you're somebody that's 100% African American, but I'm not. So Asian issues are my issues. Jewish issues are my issues. So even though I'm somebody that is ethnically Jewish, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to be in solidarity with Palestinians, because at the end of the day, I'm going to be in solidarity with whatever is right. Because if I have the extra means to go ahead and give money to the issue, that's what I'm going to go ahead and do. And just because they're not Black, I'm not going to say that's not my fucking problem.
Let's go to Azzy, then we'll go to Legend and Fanatic, okay? And then we'll probably just wrap things up.
Yeah, so I feel like we're just being very, you know what, and I'm just gonna address it. Prime. It is a war. It is a war, and it's happening. It's happening globally. Like anywhere there's any type of Palestinian Israeli, it's happening here. It's happening there. There's, matter of fact, there was an instance where there was a protest in New York, and then people from Israel, you call them Israeli, as the media spins it, but it is a war, and it's going to be a war until somebody completely loses it. So, but no, I'm saying, yes, I'm saying, to say solidarity is listen, the individual can be in solidarity with something. If you truly believe that we're going through the same problems, yes, you are in solidarity with that. You're choosing to be in solidarity. But we're talking about nations as a whole. If you look at Palestine and Israel, there are a very diverse group of many tribes within Palestine, many different tribes within Israel. When Israel was first established, there was a lot of people who are not just Islam. There was Christian Palestinians, there was Hebrew Palestinians, there's Islamic. There's a lot of different groups. There's a lot going on in that situation. So I'm saying, are you aligned? You're aligned with Palestine as a whole? Well, then the Black community needs to be aligned as a whole with Palestine. And it's to say it's not solidarity. You are an advocate of these problems. You are speaking for people who don't have a voice. You are a supporter of these issues you care for. Yes, but solidarity, you need to have, like you brought up Mandela. You need to have a certain amount of, like for South Africa and Ireland, there was reciprocated. Like you're saying, they drew a memorial of George Floyd. Yes, that's fine and dandy. They were speaking out. They were in support of our issues, but we're not in solidarity. That's not solidarity. It literally means an alliance. Like we are fighting each other's battles. That's literally what that means. We are fighting each other's battles. And when it's times for us, when we need them, they need to be them as a unit to come and help us. Okay. And I'm just saying, listen, okay, I'm in support of them. I'm in support of my Islamic brethren, my Christian Palestinian brethren.
Sure.
Anybody, like, I'm watching the
Sure.
graph,
Sorry,
and I'm
we just
watching
have limited
Palestine
time. We just
slowly.
have, dude, we just have limited time. I'm sorry. We just got to finish up. So, finish up what you're saying, and then we'll just move on to we just got to go.
Yeah, listen, you can say we're in support. We're in. If you want to use the term solidarity, you can go ahead and use it. I don't believe you guys are using the term correctly. We are in support. We are an advocate of their issues. I'm against any type of war in general. Like any type of, like, people are dying on both sides. People have people are mad. They have a lot of issues on both sides.
Sure.
So yeah, choose a side.
All right, thank you. Legend, I want you to get a chance to get in a final word on this one. I can't hear you. You're not muted on my end.
Right. You hear me?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so we please not even include Black Lives Matter global into this thing, because although I agree with the sentiment and the message of Black Lives Matter, I am not in solidarity with Black Lives Matter organization global. Patrice Coolers and the other females who co-founded that organization, which is being funded by a white person, okay, who is also pushing an LGBT agenda that has nothing to do with black men and the black family. So that being said, you said that Prom, you was talking about how Palestine or whatever, they was in solidarity with us with George Floyd and all that, but yet they had a sign that said Palestinian lives matter. Me, that's no different than when white people were saying all lives matter. Arana, you was talking about you're a mix and an amalgamation of a whole bunch of different ethnicities and everything. I'm in agreement with you. I am also a mix and a hybrid and an amalgamation of other ethnic backgrounds and ethnicities or whatever. But this whole solidarity with everybody is non-existent, because if that was the case, the civil rights movement and the civil rights legislation would have most definitely uplifted black people, where instead you see everybody else reaping the benefits and you see black people getting what's left over of that pie.
Okay. All right.
Yes, I have a problem with other groups benefiting from something that specifically and exclusively happened to a specific group of people in this country. If we're talking about America, yes, I have a problem with Latinos benefiting, with Asians benefiting, white women benefiting, and other groups of people, Native Americans who Prime mentioned that they own slaves, other people benefiting off of the murder, the raping, the killing, the lynching, the segregation, the Jim Crow. All of that was exclusive to black people here in America. That history and that struggle is not shared with everybody all over the world. That history is exclusive, and that crime is the greatest crime in human history, and that has happened to black people here in America. The descendants of American chattel slavery, the descendants of freedmen. That history is exclusive to my tribe. So yes, I'm gonna fight and advocate and represent for that specific tribe before I fight and advocate for everyone else. We had Mr. Fanatic mention how we bend over and we help everybody else, and once they get to the top, we're left behind. No more of that. That's dead now. That's done.
Okay then. Thank you. All right. So, Fanatic, I'll give you last word on this. Love to hear what you have to say. Oh, Mad Latin. Oh, also, you want to final word on this? I'll give you a final word. Okay. So, Fanatic,
All right.
then Mad Latin.
Yeah, so this whole concept, like, I decided to look to see what you were talking about as far as solidarity was concerned, and I didn't really see a lot of solidarity when it came to the Palestinians. It's really interesting, though, because in my searching for it, the one article that mentioned the solidarity, it was really not solidarity. It was just Black people and the Black civil rights leaders speaking out against what had been happening with the Palestinians. Martin Luther King was among the first U.S. leaders to meet with the PLO, and Malcolm X also expressed large amounts of whatever. Like Black people in our civil rights movement vocalized very much large amounts of support. We were meeting with them. We were talking about mutual aid. So there was a lot of those things happening from our side. But again, that civil rights movement happened in 1968, right? So that was about what would the math be there? About 53 years ago. I'm sorry, that's when the Fair Housing Act passed. Martin Luther King was killed in 1967. But the idea is, if supposedly we have all of this solidarity, right, and there's supposed to be this like union between them, it seems to me like the idea of co-opting something that is meant to speak about the atrocities of Black lives, co-opting that for your own cause doesn't seem to me like solidarity. It seems like almost dismissal, or it seems like appropriation. And that's exactly what happened. So what they are always doing is drawing parallels between some of the atrocities that are happening to us and saying, well, that's happening to us, and focusing very much on their own specific issues, while not clearly talking about everyone else. I mean, while not really throwing any amount of support our way. In the middle, like Katarana, you were saying something about like, oh yeah, well they can't really do it because of the fact that like they don't have enough power. When we were in the middle of the civil rights movement, we were still fighting for literally being able to live in white neighborhoods, literally fighting for the ability to marry white women, literally fighting, and I appreciate that fight. Literally, no, I'm kidding. Literally fighting for so many different. I'm sorry, I can't help it. Anytime I mention it, it's so bad. I'm gonna get help. I'm gonna get therapy. But we're fighting for all of these things. We're fighting for all of these things. We're clearly one of the most oppressed people in this country. And while we're fighting for these things, we're still vocalizing and meeting with these whatever and lending resources towards other people. We've always done it. It's insane to me because yes, we were fighting for civil rights, and while we were fighting for these civil rights, they still had us. When Plessy versus Ferguson was decided about separate but equal, it was because of the fact that Black men were not allowed to ride in the same carts as other people. But we always want to use the phrase "people of color." You know who was allowed to ride in those carts? Chinese people. And then we try to denigrate one of the lone dissenters on that movement and try to say he was anti-Chinese because his statement was, it's not fair that it seems unreasonable that we consider Chinese to be so much deplorable such that we would never even grant them citizenship, yet we'll allow them in the cars that we won't even let Black people get into. And his point wasn't to express he didn't want Chinese people in the car. His point was to express that it was insane that we would give this to Chinese and not give it to Black people. And then they tried to label him as anti-Chinese for that reason. It's absolutely absurd. We're constantly trying to dismiss what's happening to Black people and ignore it. And every time Black people make any sort of gain or any sort of progress, it's immediately shifted to literally everyone else. It's insane to me that white women can be the largest recipient of affirmative action, and we can say that it's something that's been, even though Black people were the largest fighters for it. It's insane to me, and we constantly misuse and misappropriate all of the benefits of African Americans. So the idea of solidarity, I have yet to see it. Outside of a mural being drawn by a lone person, which was a form of graffiti, outside of someone illegally drawing a mural of George Floyd, I have yet to see it. Now, if you can show me that, because it sounded like you were vocalizing there was some sort of support from the Palestinians. The second you show me that, the second you get me saying, oh, you got my interest at your heart, and I have nothing but love for you and your interest at heart too. I think solidarity demands mutual interest and mutual support within the denotation of the word, and you guys keep focusing on all this other nonsense about like why wouldn't we be concerned? I can be concerned all day. Am I going to put my resources into supporting you? Not without solidarity, not without you showing me that you are just as concerned for me as well.
Go ahead, Mela, and I guess I'll give you the last word on this.
So this is a matter of divide and conquer, right? Like you divide people artificially as a means of occupying and controlling everyone. That's why the whole white woman versus Black man thing has been such a big deal. Whenever there was a Black man wolf whistling at a white woman, there'd be a white man saying, oh, that black man is violating my white woman, and then they would use that to divide the two groups. So no, I don't think it's fair to say, oh, well, this white woman is taking advantage of black work efforts, because we need to have solidarity with white women. We need to have solidarity with trans folk. We need to have solidarity with everyone. And I know that it's supposed to be two ways, right? Like, it's supposed to be a thing where we both sides benefit from this solidarity. And I understand that it's not fair, that the solidarity is not going both ways all the time. But it does require someone to put in the work and create the outreach. And yes, it's really unfair that it's always the black community. That being said, though, and this is going to be a really hot, spicy take, and I'm sorry to have the last word on this, but it is extremely racist to say, oh, you're Asian, you don't get to benefit from my struggle. It's extremely racist to say, oh, the Israelis putting their knee on your neck? Well, that's not the same thing as my struggle. Nah, fuck you. You guys don't even know what's going on over there. You guys even acknowledge that you have no fucking idea what's going on over there. So how dare you pretend to say that the greatest crime ever committed is right here when you don't know a goddamn thing about what's going on over there? You know not a damn fucking thing. So before you start saying shit like this, maybe you should do some research about all the struggles that are happening all around the world before you start saying, ah, yes, I'm the greatest victim of all time. It's a lot of people. There's a lot of suffering. Yeah, Asians have been the model minority for a long time, but Asians also died building the Transcontinental Railroad. They were blown up. They were killed. This shit happens everywhere to all sorts of people. How dare you state that no one else gets to benefit from my hard work? The whole point is that we have to work together. And yes, we might be the folks who are doing the driving right now, but that does not mean that other folks won't pick up the slack. Blacks did not win the Civil War. Blacks by themselves. Blacks as a community did not stop slavery. It took a coalition. It took Abraham Lincoln and the Union Army to end slavery. It wasn't like
Union was losing until blacks came in and helped, and
oh
they
yeah.
started fighting in the war, and they won.
But then,
No, but that's what solidarity is. The Union was losing, and then all of a sudden the cavalry come. Even your argument.
Yeah, they was losing, and they needed black people to help
solidarity.
them, and then they won because of that.
Like, no,
what solidarity was that? That was mutual interest. That was mutual interest. That was mutual interest. They needed black people to help them win the war.
I'm not done yet.
It was losing.
No, hold on.
Yeah, let him finish.
As usual, black people hate the gays, and then we was fighting for our own.
Solidarity comes from
what are you talking about,
working
man?
together. That's what solidarity is. Okay.
It was mutual interest.
Yeah, mutual interest. That's what
You
solidarity
have
is.
failed to know the history. You have failed
I
to
know exactly what the history is. I think you've got a very slanted
that black people didn't do it by themselves. Black people got involved because they was fighting for their freedom. And when they got involved, they helped win.
Look, I really appreciate.
Yeah, so you admit that was a horrible example.
However, you are so.
I admit that was a horrible example.
So driven by this ideology that you have that you are failing to acknowledge the suffering of others. Your ideology is actually
I said I acknowledge it. I'm not in solidarity with it.
Well, I mean, the point is that you are. I'm fine with evaluating each situation independently. However, if you're evaluating each situation independently, the one thing you can't do is say, what have they done for me? That's not how this shit works. If you want to build solidarity, you have to stick out your hand. Because if you don't do it and they don't do it, where's the solidarity? How do you build solidarity? How do you create solidarity if you're not going into outreach?
We have been sticking out our hand.
Outreach. There has to be.
We have been sticking out our hand.
I already quoted it. This is what's so funny about it.
Yeah,
okay, all right. Sorry, whoa, everyone.
We've been sticking out our hand and helping everybody else but ourselves.
Please, finish your point, Matt Latin.
The Palestinians have been occupied for 53 years. So yes, there have been outreach 53 years ago. But it's not like the Palestinian situation has changed. It hasn't. They haven't, there's no way for Palestinians to
53
help us. What
versus
are you talking about?
400
Well,
plus.
then it's not
Okay.
solidarity.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
No, I mean,
That's
the point is, you have to help someone get to a point where
53
they can give us
versus
solidarity,
400
right?
plus.
All right.
It's not an alliance.
Okay.
All right.
53 versus
It's
400
reinforcement.
plus.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Look.
53
So look,
versus 500
That's
plus.
all right.
Centuries.
All right. So Madeline, I imagine you got your point out. I'm going to take my privilege. I'm going to respond to Fanatic. Fanatic. First of all, Asians weren't considered Asians previously. And those cars you're talking about, right? Those colored only cars, right? And those whites, where Asians were allowed to ride in the whites only section, I think is what you were saying. Well, Asians weren't considered colored. They just weren't at the time. They weren't at the time. No, they could drink at the whites only fountain because they didn't have the same racial categories that we have today. So comparing the two doesn't make sense. And then beyond that, so again, just a simple Google search. A simple Google search shows Palestinians marching for Black Lives Matter, right? Actual having marched. We have videos of them marching of Black Lives Matter. Videos I can send you. I gotta send you the article. People in Palestine, Syria, both protesting in support of Black Lives Matter. Like this is like to say this isn't a thing that's been happening.
Marching is solidarity now.
Oh, okay. Well, whatever, dude. Whatever. You just have to leave that alone. All right. We'll move on. Anyway. Thanks all for being here. The stream is not ending. We're gonna roll into our open walk on panel. Right after this, right after I give these people an outro, we're gonna roll into open walk on panel. So we'd love to see you there. So we have more content for you right after this. But I'll give everyone that outro, and then we'll move on. Okay. So we'll start. Why don't we start with Legend? Legend, you want to tell the world about yourself, where they can find you?
I'm not really into social media, but I think what is my Prime _ Legend IG.
Okay. All right. Everyone look for Prime Legend on Instagram. Thank you. All right. Azzy, as always, it's good to have you here. Yeah, tell the world where they can find you.
You guys can find me Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, Azzy, either Azzy.ohm or Azzy_ohm. One of those. If you find my Twitch page, I have a Discord link. If you guys want to continue the conversation about whether or not, or if you want to provide information, I'm glad to always learn more. I'm glad to share information. The amount of information I have has been growing because people have been sharing with me. So yeah, you can find me on those platforms, or you can find me here on the PrimeCayes panel. You know, follow PrimeCayes. Excuse me. Follow his channel, and you'll see me more often.
Thanks so much. All right. Next, Karana, who provided us with this question. Questions that are far more explosive than I could have possibly imagined. Katarana, as always, you're a great addition to this channel, and we're always happy to have you around. Tell the world about yourself.
Yeah. So neurodivergent panel is tomorrow with guest comer Demon Mama. Be there. It'll be here. Yay. Woohoo. Okay. Other than that, I just yeah, hella panels because I have nothing to hold me back now. So panels every 5 minutes forever until the end of time. Other than that, you can find me on Twitch and on YouTube, where I uploaded the Flat Earth debate. Now it's there. So anyone that wants to laugh into non-existence can watch it. And yeah, I'm on all the socials and I'll post my link tree too. So yeah, thank you for letting me give questions.
Yes. Oh, the questions are always welcome. Always welcome. Katarana was there with that. I was just trying to come up with questions earlier today. And she was so kind as to be helpful, and that's very much appreciated. And it's appreciated. Fanatic, when Fanatic provided his question, that's always very much appreciated. Matt Latin, thanks for being around and being a part of this discussion. Tell people where they can find you.
Yeah. So thanks for having me. I'm really glad that you do this, Prime. Like, I seriously am grateful to have this space to talk about these issues. You can find me. I put my stuff up here So I've got a website. Oh, wrong finger. I got a website, madlad.com. I've got my Twitch, madlad_n. I have a chess company, hypechess.com. We teach chess to adults 13 up. So if you want to learn chess, we do offer free lessons. So you can actually sign up for that in the at the URL there. Yeah, and I had a great time on the panel. Thanks for having me. Sorry for getting heated. Just I kind of hold it back to the last minute, I guess.
Yeah, black people can't be racist.
By the way, Azzy, I'm gonna erase you from my trash can because I feel like you haven't had the most trash take of the evening tonight. So I'm just gonna erase this for you. So there you go.
Oh man, you left me there. You left me in the trash.
I mean,
I forgot and forgiven,
I'm
man.
really petty. It's been 2 weeks. I apologize.
Let's go to Mr.
You ever put yourself in that most trash take before?
I mean, learning can happen.
I guess that means no. I wonder if you're in there tonight.
Fanatic, I appreciate you being here as always, dude. We've had a deep disagreement, but that's not a new thing for the two of us. But as always, I appreciate your perspective, even though it may be vastly different from mine. In fact, that it makes these conversations more valuable when you have different people with different points of view on these things. So again, Fanatic, I respect you. So thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I think this space, again, is the most amazing space. And the reason why is because we can have these discussions. And I don't think it devolved into like ad hominem nonsense for the most part. We still even if we raise our voices and cut each other off and it got heated, I think most people can still sense and feel that even though Black people get into talk, that we still have respect for one another, even if we disagree with the opinions. And even if I sometimes present the most amazing takes, I understand why. No, I'm kidding. I'm not going to talk myself. But at the end of the day, I think this was a really valuable conversation. I think there's a lot to learn. I wish I could have a conversation with Matt Ladden. I do know, just a decent amount about the Israeli conflict. I have read a bit Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I know a decent amount, but it's not enough that I would feel confident, to speak authoritatively. But I would speak confidently and say that there was several pieces of the Exclusion Act of like 1878, which definitely said that Chinese people were they weren't eligible for naturalization or nationalization because of the fact that they were deemed not white. And even though they were deemed not white, they were still allowing those white cars. There were several different things that 100% clearly demonstrated that Chinese weren't white. Chinese weren't allowed to pass the bar in China. And so yes, they were not. I'm just making it crystal clear. They were 100% eligible and ineligible for citizenship. They 100% made quotas, and they were only allowing specific people within the quotas. And then after they had created those quotas, then they started drafting insane amounts of anti-Chinese legislation that started limiting when they could come back. They had to have specific forms of citizenship. If they didn't have that form of citizenship and they left the country, they couldn't come back. While they were gone, they changed the type of citizenship that was required, and then they had to be updated. But because they were gone, they couldn't get the updated form of passports or identification. So then that deemed them unable to come back to the country. There was so much anti-Chinese legislation, but they let them niggas drink from their fountain. They let them niggas in their cars.
Yeah.
The only people that were excluded from that
Dude, that's exactly that. Because Jim Crow wasn't consistent, wasn't morally consistent. It was that they had light skin, and so they could. That's my only point. Not that they didn't face all that anti-Chinese bias, absolutely, right? But like simply with under Jim Crow and under those rules, they were simply allowed to do those things, right? Because they weren't Black. Because
that was my point. So the Jim Crow was specifically and declaratively anti-Black, and some of the things were exclusively anti-Black, and so Chinese people were able to reap the benefits, several benefits that Blacks were not, even though
but
Chinese
that doesn't
had
mean that
other
they weren't our
forms
struggle.
of
I can't do this.
You're right. Okay. Well, maybe we should go ahead and make this the conversation in the walk-on panel. But anyway, I love you. You can find me twitch.tv/MrFanatic, where I stream these conversations and do some commentary. You can find me on Instagram at Mr. Fanatic, Twitter at Mr. Fanatic. You can find all of my music some of the amazing, beautiful music like Revolution, which is an homage to the Black struggle. You can find that on literally every platform. The name of the song is Revolution, and the name of the artist is Fanatic. There's no Mr. there, but you can go ahead and refer to me as sir if you want to. Go ahead and respect your elders. Yeah, this is great. I'll probably visit the walk-on panel because I have a lot of pent-up frustration because I felt like my point wasn't addressed. So I'm gonna go ahead and go in when I get up in that walk-on panel. So yeah, I'll be there.
All right. To my audience, once again, we're gonna do that walk-on panel right now. You always have more content available for you. Anyone here is welcome to join us on the walk-on panel, but if not, that's okay. Thank you for spending your time, your energy, your passion, a lot of passion, and your knowledge with my audience. I know they appreciate it as much as I do. Thank you for being here.